Chapter 920. Luo Ba was really pitiful. Everyone sighed ruefully. Being slapped twice in public could be considered to be nailed to the pillar of shame, and he could forget about washing his name off. However, this new top student was indeed ferocious. Not only was his comprehension, spirit, and battle technique superior, but his actual combat was also so strong. However, Luo Kaifeng was right there, so was it really good to humiliate the Luo clan like this? As expected, Luo Kaifeng's expression was extremely dark. He didn't stop Luo Ba from making a move because he wanted the latter to personally reclaim his honor, but he didn't think that the gap between Luo Ba and Ling Han was so wide. One of the three great young elites of the imperial capital was actually no match for a lowly commoner from a small world. Who could believe it? Since Luo Ba couldn't possibly be Ling Han's match, Luo Kaifeng could only make a move himself. Otherwise, the Luo clan would really lose all face. Stealing and selling alchemical pills from the academy, and then injuring a fellow student. Such a person doesn't deserve to stay in the academy, he said darkly, and a frightening spiritual pressure instantly charged towards Ling Han. Immortals cultivated the spirit, and he was an elite of the Sun-Moon tier, so the strength of his spirit was who knew how many times that of Ling Han. Under this attack, Ling Han suddenly felt as if there was a huge mountain pressing down on his head, about to crush his bones. Only by bending down could he reduce the pressure. But Ling Han knew that the other party wanted to pressure him into lowering his head, or even making him kneel. He was full of pride, so how could he be willing to be humiliated? Ling Han stood ramrod straight. Pa, the godly bones in his body crackled violently, resisting Luo Kaifeng's pressure. The Sun-Moon tier was really too strong. Even if it was just an aura, it made Ling Han sweat profusely, his eyes red, and his veins throbbing intensely. Strictly speaking, the shattering void tier couldn't possibly resist the aura of the Sun-Moon tier at all. The gap in cultivation level was too great. However, Ling Han was too proud. He could lose, he could die, but he would definitely not kneel to others. Everyone was indifferent at first, but soon revealed shocked expressions. This guy's willpower was too terrifying. A clear cracking sound could be heard from within Ling Han's body, and the sweat on his forehead was practically flowing like a small stream, completely drenching his clothes. However, he still stood proudly like a mountain peak, his spine perfectly straight, without the slightest bit of bending. Who wouldn't admire you? You actually still refuse to admit your guilt. Luo Kaifeng shouted. Today, he had to make Ling Han miserable. Only by doing so would he be able to make people ignore the humiliation of Luo Ba being slapped twice. I'm not guilty, so why would I plead guilty? Ling Han said boldly. Xiao, just at this moment, a figure flew over from afar. This was an incomparably beautiful woman who looked to be in her 20s. She had a scholarly air about her, but now, her face was filled with excitement. Ling Han, she called from afar. Isn't this Gu Lingyu? One of the three beauties of the imperial city. I heard that she has outstanding talent in alchemy, and was accepted by the Alchemy Institution long ago. Our academy also has the Alchemy Institution. There are too few people in the Alchemy Institution, and everyone deals with alchemical pills all day long. Indeed, there are many people who still don't know that there is such an institution. However, the Alchemy Institution has a special status, and everyone has to give them face. Everyone nodded. Alchemists were a special group, and their status was extraordinary. They could not be easily offended. Gu Lingyu ran into the courtyard, and directly said, the effects of the replenishing spirit pill that you concocted are 30% stronger than normal pills. Did you improve the pill recipe, or do you have some special alchemy technique? I've investigated you, and you came from a small world. You've just arrived in the Imperial City for less than a month, so it shouldn't be possible for you to improve the pill recipe. So, you must have some special alchemy technique, right? She said so much in one breath, and then suddenly stopped. She looked at the others somewhat blankly, and said, Is there something going on here? It was quite lively. Everyone was speechless. Did you only realize now that something was wrong? However, Gu Lingyu revealed a shocking piece of news. Ling Han knew alchemy. Fuck, that replenishing spirit pill was concocted by him. No wonder he admitted to selling the alchemy, but denied stealing and selling the Academy's alchemy. So that was the case. He had concocted the alchemy himself, and yet he didn't allow others to sell it? The Academy did not have such a rule. Luo Kaifeng was instantly speechless, and Wei Qianshu even snorted heavily. He swept a stern gaze at the Luo brothers. You guys are making false accusations, and you will also be punished by the Academy. With Gu Lingyu's words, what else could Luo Kaifeng say? He could only blame the Luo brothers for not even understanding the basics of the situation before coming to make false accusations. Now, how were they going to clean up this mess? Ling Han revealed a smile, and said, Senior sister, I have some matters to deal with. I'll talk to you later. What is it? I'll help you. Gu Lingyu appeared very impatient. In her eyes, what could be more important than discussing alchemy? Ling Han gave an "oh" and said, These two are saying that I stole the Academy's replenishing spirit pill and sold it. Gu Lingyu was instantly enraged. She looked at the two brothers disdainfully, and said, In the future, don't even think of eating alchemy concocted by the Alchemy Institution. They actually dared to falsely accuse an alchemist, then they were the enemies of all alchemists. The Luo brothers were extremely depressed. But no matter how much they overestimated Ling Han, how could they possibly imagine that an ancient martial art practitioner from a small world who was only in his 20s would actually be an alchemist and martial dual cultivator? The blow of the stick knocked them out of their wits. Ling Han coughed, and said seriously, Elder, these two are making false accusations against me. According to the Academy's rules, how should I deal with them? Wei Qianshu couldn't help but feel awkward. If it were someone else, he would naturally deal with it impartially, and do as he should. But Luo Kaifeng was right beside him. No matter what, he had to care about the Luo clan's face, right? But with so many people watching, could he openly side with the Luo clan? Luo Kaifeng saw this, and hurriedly said, Luo Ba and Luo Lai are not wrong. After all, they did indeed go to Ling Han to sell alchemy. They were also thinking for the Academy, and that was why they reported it to the Law Enforcement Association. Fine, they were even rewarded for making a false accusation. Ling Han said indifferently, then according to this elder's words, wouldn't this student have suffered a loss for nothing? If it weren't for this senior apprentice sister running out to testify for this student, wouldn't this student have been persecuted to death by this elder? To think that I have passed through 8 levels of the entrance exam, and have the chance to become a 4-star genius in the future. If I were to be persecuted to death, wouldn't that be a great loss to the Academy? Luo Kaifeng's face couldn't help but twitch. He had seen people with thick skin, but it was really the first time he had seen someone like Ling Han. However, what the other party said was indeed the truth. It was just that he was too immodest. Wei Qianshu opened his mouth and said, Then what do you want? He planned to be the peacemaker. Ling Han revealed a smile and said, If you give me a few thousand true origin stones, I will definitely forget about this unhappiness. Otherwise, even if I have to risk my entire body's lofty and unyielding character, I still want the Academy to give me an explanation. Chapter 921. Everyone had to admit that Ling Han indeed had pride, and was admirably proud. Being able to stand against an elite of the Sun-Moon tier, this practically made everyone kneel down in admiration. But now that Ling Han said this, it instantly made everyone's lips twitch. Aside from being proud, you're also a bit shameless. Who praises themselves like this? However, daring to extort the Luo clan, just based on this point, everyone had to kneel down in admiration. Luo Kaifeng's expression was gloomy. The Luo clan was a 4th-rate clan, with deep resources. Taking out 10,000 true origin stones, which was an astronomical figure for ordinary people, was not a problem. But who was the other party? A mere shattering void tier cultivator. If even a shattering void tier cultivator could extort such a large sum from the Luo clan, then wouldn't the Luo clan instantly go bankrupt? However, the present situation was very bad for the Luo clan, and they had to pay to avert disaster. 18,000 is too much, Luo Kaifeng said solemnly. You didn't suffer any substantial damage, so I'll compensate you at most 100 true origin stones. Gasp! Many students were so shocked that their mouths gaped open. They had really been extorted by Ling Han. That was the Luo clan, a fourth-rate clan. What kind of concept was a fourth-rate clan? Even the left and right ministers and the 7 generals could only be considered second-rate clans. Fourth-rate clans weren't awesome enough, but now, the Grand Luo clan actually lowered its head to a shattering void tier cultivator from a small world. TSK, 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 this was really fun. Ling Han shook his head, and said, how can that be? If it weren't for senior sister Gu coming in time, I would have long been crushed by this elder's aura. That's not a real injury. 5,000 true origin stones, not one less. Gu Lingyu was a genius in alchemy, but she was obviously too lacking in the matter of human relations. She immediately nodded, and said, bullying us alchemists, compensation of a few thousand true origin stones is naturally something we should do. This senior sister was not bad, too cooperative. Ling Han knew that he couldn't turn the tables and kill the Luo clan brothers, so he might as well ask for some benefits. He couldn't lose no matter what. Luo Kaifeng really wanted to kill someone. If you were being bullied, it was the Luo clan that was being bullied, okay? Luo Ba had suffered that slap, and now his face was swollen. Why didn't you say anything? He naturally wouldn't take Gu Lingyu seriously, but he didn't dare to overlook the alchemy institution behind her. Those people were all stubborn and had strange temperaments. He snorted and said, 500 true origin stones, 4,000. 1,000. 3,000. 2,000. Deal. Luo Kaifeng waved his hand, scattering out a large number of true origin stones. Ling Han naturally wouldn't stand on ceremony, and collected these precious stones into the Black Tower. Right now, he was just extorting some benefits. Once he had the strength, it would not be so simple. Let's go. Luo Kaifeng shouted at the Luo brothers. These two pieces of trash, if it weren't for them, why would he need to swallow his anger at a mere shattering void tier cultivator? The Luo brothers were also like children who had done something wrong. They didn't even let out a fart as they obediently left. On the wall, the students also dispersed in an uproar. Now, there was something to brag about again. Wei Qianshu clicked his tongue in wonder. Gu Lingyu's timely arrival naturally helped Ling Han resolve a difficult situation, but even if she hadn't arrived, Ling Han's concocting alchemical pills in public could actually also solve the problem. This brat was really capable of enduring. It was obvious that victory was already in his grasp, yet he used this opportunity to first give Luo Ba a beating, and then extorted a sum of money from the Luo clan, causing the Luo clan to be unable to retaliate. His courage was astonishing. To be honest, even Wei Qianshu himself didn't dare to become enemies with the Luo clan. It was said that the Luo clan not only had 10 Sun Moon tier elites, but their ancestor was also a super elite in the high extreme of the Sun Moon tier. If the heavenly body tier did not appear, there was practically no one who could rival them. Who would have the gall to dare take advantage of the situation and scheme against the Luo clan? Young man, take care, Wei Qianshu said, a sliver of worry in his eyes. This time, Ling Han was admittedly very pleased. Not only did he give Luo Ba a beating, but he also obtained a large number of true origin stones, but would the Luo clan let him go so easily? Thank you, elder, for your advice. I know what to do, Ling Han said respectfully. He was naturally able to distinguish between good intentions and false ones. Wei Qianshu nodded, and left swiftly. Ling Han, tell me quickly. Have you improved the pill recipe, or do you have a special alchemy technique? Gu Lingyu's eyes sparkled. When it came to alchemy, she would get carried away. Ling Han smiled, and said, I do indeed have a special alchemy technique. Can you teach me? Gu Lingyu immediately asked. This. Ling Han muttered to himself. This woman had really forgotten the ways of the world when it came to alchemy. Which alchemist would leak their alchemy techniques? Even when teaching their disciples, they would also hide their techniques. Ling Han, on the other hand, did not hide anything from his two disciples who had learned alchemy. However, this kind of technique was his own creation, and only he could unleash the full potential of the three-fire guide. Though you have helped me, wanting to learn the three-fire guide just like that was absolutely impossible. However, Ling Han could tell that this woman was obsessed with alchemy. It was not that she did not know the limits of alchemy, but that her mind was filled with alchemy, and she was completely unaware that some requests were too excessive. Ling Han thought about it, and said, then let's exchange some pointers. It was impossible for him to teach her the three-fire guide on their first meeting, but on account of her obsession with alchemy, he could discuss alchemy techniques with her. Gu Lingyu naturally agreed readily. The two of them exchanged pointers on their alchemy techniques. Gu Lingshi had indeed benefited greatly from the three-fire guide's train of thought, and Ling Han had also been inspired. After all, her attainments in alchemy were not lower than his, and they could complement each other to a considerable extent. In this way, Ling Han's initial, teaching a thing or two, became an equal discussion. Unknowingly, the sky darkened. Luo clan. The Luo clan brothers knelt in the main hall, while the Luo clan patriarch, Luo Hongdao, sat with a gloomy expression. Do you know why I punished you? Luo Hongdao asked. Luo Ba said, we have brought shame to the Luo clan. Luo Hongdao shook his head. This is only one point, but more importantly, the way the two of you handled this matter has greatly disappointed me. You actually did not fully understand the situation before rushing to set up a trap. From the very beginning, you have already lost. Yes. The Luo clan brothers both nodded fiercely. Even without Gu Lingyu's appearance, Ling Han still had a way to prove himself, though it would be slightly more troublesome. When you make a move, you must aim for the weak spot, and not give the opponent any chance to turn things around, Luo Hongdao said darkly. The Luo clan brothers both nodded. Do you have the confidence to defeat that lowly commoner? Luo Hongdao asked again. Luo Ba very much wanted to be domineering for once, but after being slapped twice by Ling Han, his confidence was also slapped away. But in front of the Lord Patriarch, how could he admit defeat? He hurriedly puffed out his chest and said, yes. He had put on an attitude, but his tone was lacking. Humph. Luo Hongdao once again made a sound of dissatisfaction. How did I teach you just now? Did you not enter your brain at all? Putting aside the fact that you had already been defeated miserably by that lowly commoner previously, do you know the true background of that lowly commoner? True background? The Luo clan brothers were all at a loss. A lowly commoner who had ascended from a mere small world, was there a need to understand? Fool! Luo Hongdao shouted heavily. That lowly commoner is not simple, but the ruler of a nation who had come from splitting open the skies. Pooh! The Luo clan brothers immediately spluttered. Chapter 922. Split open the skies. How is this possible? In the history of our chaotic star's majestic empire, there has never been such a record. The Luo brothers were in disbelief. Luo Hongdao frowned slightly, and said discontentedly, just because it hasn't happened, it won't happen. Then what meaning does the word miracle still exist? Furthermore, if this empire doesn't have a person who can split open the skies, is there definitely one elsewhere? The Luo brothers were so shocked that their scalps went numb. This was something they didn't dare imagine. As early as 300,000 years ago, there was a great Su empire that ascended, and the ruler of this empire was shockingly talented in martial art, reaching the consummate level of the mountain river tier in a short few hundred years. Hiss, when they heard Luo Hongdao's words, the Luo brothers both inhaled sharply. Completing the cultivation of the mountain river tier in a few hundred years was really too astonishing. It should be known that Zhao Luan, who had always been known as a supreme genius, was now already over 500 years old, but was still only in the high extreme of the mountain river tier. Why have there never been any records of this great Su empire? Luo Ba asked. Because this great Su empire is a vassal of a small empire, but the ruler actually hid his identity and entered our empire, and even cultivated in the Scarlet Heaven Academy for a few hundred years, Luo Hongdao said. Great Su Empire, could that person be the spiritual brand in the third stage of the White Star Tower, Su Ran? Luo Ba suddenly realized. Correct. Luo Hongdao nodded. But why is there almost no legend about him? Luo Ba asked curiously. Because this person actually snuck into the national treasury, wanting to steal the nation's important treasure, so the Empress gave a strict order to erase all traces of his existence. However, the tool spirit of the White Star Tower is independent, and no one can suppress this person in a battle of the same tier, so that became the only place that still has traces of his existence. Luo Hongdao revealed a secret. The Luo brothers gritted their teeth. He actually dared to enter the national treasury to steal. This person's courage was really nature-defying. I'm telling you this to let you know that before defeating a person, you must have a complete understanding of him. Otherwise, you may be the ones to be defeated, Luo Hongdao said seriously. Lord Patriarch, we understand, the Luo brothers hurriedly said respectfully. I ask you again, do you have the confidence to battle that lowlife? Luo Hongdao stared at Luo Ba, his eyes sharp. Luo Ba's heart trembled, and he said loudly, for the clan, Luo Ba is willing to climb a mountain of swords and dive into a sea of flames. Ha 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 ha. Luo Hongdao laughed loudly. He suddenly slammed the table, and said, good. He threw out a crimson stone, and said, this is a blood tear stone. According to legends, when a true divine beast of heaven and earth was injured, its blood and tears mixed together, leaving behind an undying aura on the stone. Refine it, and your battle prowess will definitely break through 20 stars. At that time, you can fight that lowly commoner to the death. You must kill him. Luo Hongdao's face was full of malice. He didn't care about 2,000 true origin stones, but this lowly commoner of a small world actually dared to extort the Luo family. Even he was truly enraged by this. If it wasn't for the Scarlet Heaven Academy, he would have directly sent people to kill Ling Han. But now, he could only go around in circles. Meanwhile, Luo Ba was overjoyed. The blood tear stone was definitely a precious treasure for shattering void tier cultivators. With the addition of the aura of a divine beast, the might of each of his attacks could be increased by several times. Moreover, it would remain forever. However, the higher one's cultivation level was, the smaller the help would be. Even so, his battle prowess could easily break through 20 stars, so suppressing Ling Han would definitely not be a problem. Meanwhile, Luo Lai's face was filled with envy. He was also a genius of the Luo family, but he was ranked behind Luo Ba. Any benefits had to be enjoyed by Luo Ba before he could take his place. If there wasn't enough, he wouldn't get a share. He also wanted the blood tear stone, but now, he could only kneel, clench his fists tightly, and pretend to be happy for Luo Ba. For some reason, there was something that he didn't say. Shui Yenyu had once said that those who came by opening the skies could possibly receive a generous gift from heaven and earth, and possess an additional 3 stars of power. Opening the skies required battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, and added with an additional 3 stars of power, that would at least be 23 stars of battle prowess, right? Even if Luo Ba refined the blood tear stone, he might not be Ling Han's match. But since they were going to fight in the death arena, a cold smirk tugged at the corners of Luo Lai's lips. To him, it would be a good thing if either of the two died, right? So, why should he waste his breath? He was also an ambitious person, and definitely didn't want to be number 2 for 1,000 years. After refining the blood tear stone, immediately challenged that lowly commoner. This time, definitely don't disappoint me, Luo Hongdao said with a solemn expression. Luo Ba definitely won't disappoint Lord Patriarch's expectations, Luo Ba said excitedly. After refining this blood tear stone, he would definitely become the number 1 elite in the Shattering Void tier. Whatever Ling Han, whatever Ma Xing, whatever Qing Haoren, he would suppress all of them with a single hand, and then use this power to propose marriage to the Ji clan. Ji Yun, this bitch, actually had such a close relationship with Ling Han. He hated it. After getting his hands on this woman in future, he would definitely punish her properly. Gu Lingyu was definitely an alchemy fanatic. Once she started discussing alchemy, she would forget everything else. Even when she was tired from talking, she would carelessly lie down on the bed and directly fall asleep, only leaving behind a sentence of discussing when she woke up. This caused Ling Han to not know whether to laugh or cry. You're too trusting, aren't you? Though she was like a madman when she talked about alchemy, completely lacking the slightest bit of femininity, with her stunning appearance, coupled with her alluring figure, lying down on the bed without any precaution, did you really think that everyone was a gentleman? Even if they were gentlemen, there would still be times when they couldn't control themselves. Ling Han shook his head, and gave up his bedroom to her, while he himself entered into the Black Tower. There were still 2 days left in his peaceful life. On the second day, Gu Lingyu discussed alchemy with Ling Han again, until Ling Han could no longer bear it and chased her out of the courtyard. Only then did he have some peace and quiet. However, he had just chased Gu Lingyu away when Li Weiwei and Ji Yun, came together. Blockhead, my father wants to see you. Li Weiwei had come to inform him of a piece of news. The left minister wanted to see him. Ling Han was slightly surprised. Though he was very proud, he also understood that with his current strength, he was only a minor character in front of the left minister, not even qualified to take an extra look. Not even a month had passed, and he wanted to see him again. Those who did not know would think that his imperial favor was flourishing. Li Weiwei had only come to inform him. With her spoilt temperament, she naturally would not accompany Ling Han back. Done speaking, she left. Yet Ling Han did not dare to tarry, and immediately rushed to the left minister's residence. He made announcements along the way, and it was still Xiang Qingyun who appeared, bringing him to a small garden. The left minister was currently trimming a potted flower, and was completely focused. Xiang Qingyun did not dare to make a sound and disturb him, and stood solemnly at the side, waiting. As Ling Han watched, he suddenly looked astonished. Under Minister Li's hands, this potted flower actually exuded some kind of charm. Every branch was as if a grand master of martial art was stretching his arms and legs, demonstrating a mystical technique. He could not help but compare it with the 6 techniques returned to one that he was currently cultivating, and in an instant, he actually had a great realization. Immediately, he sat down cross-legged, and the rhythm of great Tao surged out from his body. Startled like this, the left minister instantly made a soft sound of surprise, and stopped his hands. Chapter 923. The spiritual rain bone developing pill was definitely one of the best among level 7 divine pills, regardless of whether it was in terms of its effects or the difficulty of its refinement. Alchemist Li wouldn't, the treasure forest pavilion was very awesome, and it could be said that he was loyal and devoted to the treasure forest pavilion. Thus, he naturally gained the trust of the treasure forest pavilion. As long as the pill's level was right, the treasure forest pavilion would unconditionally provide any pill recipe that he wanted to learn. The spiritual rain bone developing pill was an ancient pill recipe, but the treasure forest pavilion still possessed it. Alchemist Li had also learned it before. However, after failing several hundred times, he didn't dare to refine it again. He couldn't afford to fail like this. Alchemists were rich, but level 7 ingredients required money. Not only did they require money, but they were also ridiculously expensive. He really wanted to refuse to be outdone, and say that he could also refine the spiritual rain bone developing pill to compete with him. However, he really didn't have the confidence to do so. His expression changed drastically. If Ling Han really could refine the spiritual rain bone developing pill, then no matter what pill he refined, even if he refined it to perfection, it would still be useless. There would only be one word for him: defeat. He didn't believe it. He didn't believe it. If a brat like him could surpass him in alchemy, then hadn't he been living like a dog for the past 2 million years? I'll refine the 4 clouds 4 rise pill. This was the most difficult level 7 alchemical pill that he could refine. Although it couldn't compare to the spiritual rain bone developing pill, at least he couldn't lose out in terms of aura. Both sides prepared their own ingredients, and then began to refine. He Jingyun had already been dug out, and at this moment, his face was already colorful and fascinating. Logically speaking, he should have left as soon as possible after being humiliated so badly. Otherwise, it would be a humiliation for him to be glanced at by others. However, he didn't want to leave. He wanted to personally witness this competition. He wanted to see Ling Han fail. However, he discovered that something was amiss the moment the competition began. Ling Han's performance was far more composed than Alchemist Li's. One had to realize that the spiritual rain bone developing pill that Ling Han had refined was far more difficult than the 4 clouds 4 rise pill, yet he was even more composed. What did this mean? Their strengths were not on the same level. Unfortunately, Alchemist Li couldn't afford to be distracted in the slightest. The 4 clouds 4 rise pill was the most difficult level 7 divine pill that he could refine. However, he couldn't guarantee success every time he refined such a divine pill. Thus, he naturally had to be extremely careful. The time required to refine a level 7 divine pill was even longer, with a minimum of 20 days. Meanwhile, for a level 8 divine pill, it would take at least a month. Everyone went back to what they were doing. Apart from the members of the Treasure Forest Pavilion and the Han Lin Pavilion who stayed behind, everyone else left. It wouldn't be too late to come back after a dozen or so days. However, on the 16th day, Alchemist Li was the first to be defeated. His cauldron exploded. Pang! There was a loud explosion, and his cauldron exploded. Fortunately, the consequences weren't severe. It was fine as long as his cauldron had exploded. Otherwise, if there had been a large explosion, more than half of the people here would have died. The old man was in a daze. His cauldron had actually exploded, so he could only hope that Ling Han's cauldron had also exploded. Otherwise, as long as Ling Han could refine the alchemical pill, he would win. Another few days passed, and Ling Han stopped. He suddenly slapped the lid of his cauldron. Pang! There was a soft sound, and 3 alchemical pills flew out. They were surrounded by divine light, and were astonishingly brilliant. Pills formed. Alchemist Li instantly sat on the ground. Ling Han had actually managed to refine the spiritual rain bone developing pill. Even if his cauldron hadn't exploded, he could only express his admiration. Moreover, Ling Han hadn't simply formed pills. He had concocted a total of 3 pills. How terrifying! Ling Han gripped the 3 spiritual rain bone developing pills in his hand, smiled, and said, "Alchemist Li, do you want to inspect them?" "No, there's no need," Alchemist Li said in a daze. He had personally watched Ling Han concoct alchemical pills for the next few days. His movements were as smooth as moving clouds and flowing water, and even he found them to be extremely pleasing to the eye. He crawled to his feet, pushed through the crowd, and strode forward. His figure appeared extremely stooped. Everyone sighed upon seeing this. This was a level 7 alchemist. The alchemists of the Treasure Forest Pavilion hurriedly chased after him, and they all tried to dissuade him. However, Alchemist Li smiled, and said, "I naturally have to keep my word. I'll never return to Big Trade City." However, I only said that I'd leave Big Trade City, and I didn't say that I'd leave the Treasure Forest Pavilion. I can still go to a branch in another city. Fuck. Everyone's faces twitched upon hearing this. Sure enough, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. After going around in circles, he was still staying in the Treasure Forest Pavilion. It was just that he'd moved to another city. As for alchemists, was it important where they refined pills? However, being forced out of Big Trade City was still a stain on their reputation, after all. The members of the Treasure Forest Pavilion all covered their faces and left. They had won the first round of this competition, yet they had suffered a crushing defeat afterward. Now, they couldn't produce a level 8 alchemist, so they naturally could only retreat. Staying here would only invite humiliation upon themselves. This was a competition of alchemy. Thus, even if the Treasure Forest Pavilion possessed extremely powerful cultivation power, they still couldn't act recklessly. After all, there were still some rules that they had to abide by. Greetings, Grandmaster Ling, Yun Yong Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan said as they led the members of the Han Lin Pavilion in saluting Ling Han. Their expressions were respectful. Even though Ling Han was young, his alchemy prowess was clear for all to see. A level 7 alchemist wasn't awesome enough. Ling Han had no qualms about accepting this. After all, this was his disciple, so wasn't it normal for him to pay respects to him? He casually raised his hand, and said, "No need." Yun Yong Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan invited Ling Han into the inner room. There were naturally people outside to clean up the mess. After this competition, many people had come to purchase alchemical pills because of its reputation. Thus, business was booming. "Grandmaster, may I ask why you're helping us?" Yun Yong Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan asked in confusion. With Ling Han's alchemy prowess, he could definitely find a better future in the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Why did he have to submit to a small sect like theirs? In fact, he didn't even hesitate to oppose the Treasure Forest Pavilion. Ling Han sipped his tea, and after a while, he said, "I have some history with your sect." Yun Yong Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan exchanged a glance. They were both confused about where this history had come from. One had to realize that they had come to the immortal realm 10,000 years ago. Moreover, it was clear that no one from the lower realm had come to the immortal realm. Those who had come to the immortal realm were all members of the 5 sects. A few years ago, I came from the lower realm by opening the sky. Ling Han decided to divulge a little secret. What? Yun Yong Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan both stood up in shock. The lower realm. It was actually the lower realm. How is this possible? Kang Xiu Yuan shook his head repeatedly. Who didn't know that the lower realm was controlled by the 5 sects? To say nothing of opening the sky, even shattering void tier elites would fall into the formation that the 5 sects had set up. Opening the sky meant that one had to break through the seal of heaven and earth that the 5 sects had set up. Was this possible? Ling Han broke into a smile, and said, "There is nothing in this world that is impossible." So what if it's the 5 sects? Can they hide the truth from the masses? This was true. Yun Yong Wang and Kang Xiu Yuan looked at each other. They felt as if the efforts of the 3 of them for close to 10,000 years had all been for naught. Chapter 924. Ling Han exited the garden, and saw Xiang Qingyun waiting at the entrance. When it was Ling Han's turn, a cold glint involuntarily appeared in his eyes, but before he could speak, he suddenly shivered, and looked like he was listening attentively. "Yes," he hurriedly said to the air, and turned to enter the garden. Obviously, he had been summoned by the left minister. Ling Han couldn't help but shake his head. Actually, Xiang Qingyun could be considered a genius. He had investigated, and Xiang Qingyun's results in the academy were quite impressive, using only 700 years to reach the high extreme of the mountain river tier. However, he had left the academy himself, and followed the left minister. With the backing of the left minister, indeed, even elites of the sun-moon tier would not dare to put on airs in front of Xiang Qingyun now, and he did indeed look impressive. But in front of the left minister, he was like a dog, not daring to move back when told to. Was there any meaning to such a life? Ling Han definitely could not do it. The most important thing for cultivators is still to cultivate themselves. Taking advantage of others is ultimately not the right path. Ling Han thought, and did not have any thoughts of persuading Xiang Qingyun. This path was chosen by him, so what need was there for others to interfere? He returned to the academy, and focused on cultivating his 6 techniques as one. After a moment of enlightenment in the left minister's residence, he had improved greatly on this path, and was confident that he could increase his power to the limit of 20 stars within half a year. Another day later, a shocking piece of news broke out in the academy. Ling Han and Shui Yanyu had privately pledged to marry each other, and had already become husband and wife. When the news spread, it could be said that the whole academy was in an uproar. Most people still did not know who Ling Han was. Only a very few people knew that he was the first in this year's recruitment of the Northern Institution, having passed 8 levels, and had a chance to become a 4-star genius in the future. However, Shui Yanyu was definitely a celebrity. First of all, she was one of the twin beauties of the imperial capital 20 years ago, but after entering the academy, she was replaced by someone else. After all, the immortal realm did not lack beauties. But if all the beauties of the last 10,000 years were listed and ranked, Shui Yanyu could definitely enter the top 3, and even obtaining first place would not be surprising. Beautiful as a fairy, beautiful as a peach. This was a beauty that even ascetic monks would be moved by. Otherwise, how could Zhao Luan make a sound and confirm that she was the future matriarch of the Zhao clan? That's right, the reason Shui Yanyu's reputation had become even greater was because of Zhao Luan, the son of the great General Zhao, and a genius who was ranked highly in the academy's history. Everyone knew that Shui Yanyu was his exclusive property, yet now, someone actually dared to snatch her away. Who was this? He was too daring. Then, all of Ling Han's information was dug out. The top student of this year's Northern Institution's recruitment. He passed the 8th tower. He knew how to refine pills. He came from a small world. The one who opened the skies, the Emperor Lord. The last piece of information was extremely shocking, because in the eyes of the majority, splitting open the skies was only a legend. Even in the immortal realm, there were very few who could reach 20 stars of shattering void tier. As for a small world, it was no longer possible to reach 15 stars. Even with the boost from power of the nation, it was still impossible for them to break through the threshold of 20 stars. How to split open the sky? Not simple. He could reach battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier even after coming out from a small world. No wonder he could pass through the 8 towers and be ranked among the top geniuses. But in front of the Zhao clan, all of this was fake. Ling Han had only thrown his lot in with the left minister. Unless he was the left minister's own son, what right did he have to fight over a woman with the son of the great General Zhao? A great many people were waiting to see how Ling Han would wrap things up. This Zhao Luan had publicly announced that once he graduated from the academy, he would marry Shui Yanyu, and this had also been approved by the Shui clan. Blockhead, blockhead. Li Weiwei ran over excitedly. You're really engaged to big sister Shui? Ling Han glanced at her. Wasn't this all because of her? He said calmly, so what if I am? You don't want to come out. You are not extremely handsome, and you don't know how to make women happy. What right do you have to make big sister Shui fall in love with you? Li Weiwei propped up her chin, appearing very puzzled. Even my servant girl doesn't have sex with you. Strange, could it be that big sister Shui has been bewitched? Ling Han's face was filled with black lines. This fourth young miss words were really hurtful. Though you were the daughter of the left minister, and not many people would dare to fall out with you if you said that, but with such low emotional intelligence, how many people would treat you sincerely? However, you're going to be in trouble. That guy Zhao Luan is not only a genius in martial art, he also has 3 followers. All of them are geniuses among geniuses. With a casual command, there would be lackeys who would. She made a gesture of cutting her throat. The next day, your corpse would be lying on the streets. Ling Han sighed, and said, "Can't you say something nice? Beg me." Li Weiwei placed her hands on her hips. "Though Zhao Luan is very powerful, I am not afraid of him. If you beg me to be happy, it's not like I can't protect you. Then forget it. I have no interest in being a servant." Ling Han refused resolutely. Li Weiwei was instantly infuriated. Did this stupid blockhead know that even she had to go through a mental struggle to become enemies with Zhao Luan? The strength of this Zhao clan was not the slightest bit inferior to that of the left minister's residence. Furthermore, when one had reached their level, the attitude of the younger generation would not only represent the younger generation. If news of the left minister and great general Zhao being on bad terms were spread, wouldn't that be a chance for the right minister to deal a blow? This stupid blockhead actually refused so quickly, betraying her good intentions. She was really going to die of anger. Humph, who cares if you live or die? Her temper flared up, and she immediately ran off. Ling Han's expression was calm. From the moment he agreed to Shui Yenyu's request, he had already expected what would happen. However, he believed that even Zhao Luan would not dare to commit a crime openly in the academy. Some rules had to be followed. After all, the Zhao clan was only a general of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, and not the emperor. Different situations call for different measures, so what was there to be afraid of? Oh, Yenyu really admitted it herself. Under a waterfall, a young man was currently standing with his hands behind his back. Behind him were the images of 3 mountains and rivers. He was shockingly in the high extreme of the mountain-river tier. If one looked closely, his mountains and rivers were different from the clear mountains and green waters of ordinary people. Instead, there were flashes of crimson light flickering, exuding a terrifying aura. "Yes, young master." A young man half knelt behind him. His expression was respectful and fanatical, as if the person in front of him was a god. This young man standing with his hands behind his back was precisely Zhao Luan, and the half-kneeling young man was one of his followers. His name was Sui Shao. He was currently reporting to Zhao Luan that Shui Yenyu and Ling Han had secretly pledged to marry each other. He was very angry. Shui Yenyu could be taken by their young master, and that was the good fortune that she had accumulated over several lifetimes. However, not only was she cold and indifferent to the young master, she had now actually made a cuckold of the young master. She practically deserved to die 100 times. Zhao Luan laughed loudly, shook his head, and said, "What nonsense. I gave her too much freedom." "Oh, right, what's that person's name?" "Ling Han." Sui Shao hurriedly said. "Send someone to deliver this to him. If he is willing to accept it obediently, then spare his life." Zhao Luan casually tossed out an item from his spatial spirit tool. Sui Zhao's eyes swept over it, and he couldn't help but smile coldly. He said, "As you command, young master." Chapter 925. Ling Han, come out. Ling Han was cultivating when he heard a cold shout. He came to the courtyard, opened the door, and saw 2 youngsters standing outside. They were both in the Shattering Void tier, but he didn't recognize either of them. It was not someone who had entered the Northern Institution this term, but someone from the previous term, or possibly the term before that. "What can I do for you?" Ling Han didn't bat an eyelid, although he had already guessed it. "That's senior apprentice brother Wang Wan. There's also senior Zhang Qing. They are all senior brother Zhao Luan's subordinates. Bah, they are not worthy. They are the subordinates of senior brother Zhao Luan's 3 followers. However, for them to appear at this time, they must represent senior brother Zhao. Of course, he actually dared to snatch senior brother Zhao's woman. It would be strange if senior brother Zhao didn't react. One courtyard door after another opened, and people appeared. Many of them even had cold smiles on their faces, as if they were rejoicing in the misfortune of others. This was natural. Not only was Ling Han the first place of this batch, he had actually managed to seduce senior sister Shui Yenyu. She was an unparalleled beauty, and who wouldn't be envious? When Ling Han heard this, he gave an "oh" internally. He knew that Zhao Luan would definitely make a move, but the latter obviously didn't take him seriously, and only sent 2 shattering void-tier elites here. Are you going to use force? Wang Wan, on the other hand, laughed coldly. This fellow from a small world really didn't know his place. Did he think that just because he split open the heavens, he had the qualifications to do as he pleased in the immortal realm? Today, she would teach him a lesson. We have come under the orders of senior brother Zhao Luan to deliver a gift, he said. When the surrounding people heard this, they were all puzzled. What was wrong with Zhao Luan's brain? He had already snatched his woman, yet he still wanted to give something to him. Ling Han was calm and said, "Oh, what gift?" Wang Wan and Zhang Qing looked at each other. Then, Wang Wan took out a brocade box from her spatial spirit tool. It was beautifully packaged, but it was not big. He held the box in his hand and said, "Why aren't you kneeling and receiving it?" "Kneel down." Ling Han laughed out loud. "What's wrong with you? Senior apprentice brother Zhao's gift, do you dare not kneel and accept it?" asked Zhang Qing. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Since that's the case, then take this gift back." "I can't accept it." Wang Wan snorted and said, "There's no reason to take back a gift that senior brother Zhao has given. Alright, it's up to you if you don't want to kneel and accept it. Take it." He nodded at Zhang Qing. Zhang Qing understood and began to open the brocade box. Everyone was curious as to what kind of gift Zhao Luan would give to Ling Han. They didn't think that Zhao Luan was a person who was easy to talk to. On the contrary, this genius was arrogant and overbearing, and he was famous for being tyrannical. The silk cloth on the outside of the box was untied. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Qing opened the box, revealing the item inside. Instantly, the whole place fell silent. Inside the brocade box was a dog collar. Zhao Luan wanted to treat Ling Han like a dog, keeping him by his side and ordering him around. So contemptuous, so humiliating. "In my eyes, you're only a dog. Ling Han, senior brother Zhao has said that if you accept this gift, he'll spare your life," Wang Wan said with a smile, his face filled with arrogance. Shua, everyone's eyes instantly focused on Ling Han. If he accepted this gift, then he would be Zhao Luan's servant and lackey, but if he didn't accept it, then only death awaited him. Who would dare take Zhao Luan's words as a joke? Unless Ling Han's entire life was hidden in the academy, wouldn't it be easy for the son of the great General Zhao to kill a shattering void-tier elite? What to do? Regardless of whether he accepted this gift or not, Ling Han was done for. It couldn't be helped. From the moment Ling Han and Shui Yenyu got together, his fate was already sealed. A flash of fury flickered in Ling Han's eyes, but his expression was terrifyingly calm. Holding the dog collar, he strode over. Was he going to accept it? True, compared to his life, what was dignity? Moreover, becoming Zhao Luan's dog was something many people wished for, but Zhao Luan wouldn't do it at all. Meanwhile, Wang Wan and Zhang Qing's lips curled up, showing expressions that they had expected this. Who wasn't afraid of death? Ling Han reached out, grabbed the dog collar, and then suddenly exploded with power. Pa! This dog collar was instantly broken by him. He casually tossed it onto the ground, and calmly said, "Tell Zhao Luan that I appreciate his kindness, but do not have the fortune to enjoy it." Pa! The dog collar was tossed onto the ground, and a crisp sound of impact rang out. The whole place once again became deathly silent. Ling Han was going to oppose Zhao Luan now. Where did his courage come from, and where did his confidence come from? Oh, Zhao Luan, the only son of the great General Zhao, an elite in the high extreme of the mountain river tier, and was rumored to be a 3-star genius himself. What right do you have to oppose him? Impudent, you actually dare to damage senior brother Zhao's gift. Do you know what great crime you've committed? Wang Wan shouted harshly. Ling Han's eyes were cold, and he said, using such a thing to humiliate me, could it be that I'm not going to smash it? The two of you, get lost immediately. Don't make me feel annoyed. You are already a dead man, and still dare to be arrogant, Wang Wan said coldly. Pei Ling Han stretched out a hand, and picked him up in a single move. With his present abilities, those with battle prowess below 20 stars were naturally no match for him. He gripped Wang Wan's neck, and coldly said, since I am already a dead man, I don't mind dragging a few people to die with me. Wang Wan was instantly so frightened that all the hair on his body stood on end. He did not have the slightest intention of sacrificing his life for Zhao Luan. There was no enmity between him and Ling Han, so if he died, wouldn't it be a great loss? No, don't kill me, he said in a trembling voice. The coward Ling Han casually tossed Wang Wan out. The academy allowed spars, but it definitely did not allow death or disability. Ling Han had never felt that he was a dead man, so he naturally would not throw his life away for a minor character. Get lost, he shouted. Wang Wan and Zhang Qing hurriedly fled with their tails between their legs. They were not weak, but in the shattering void tier, how could there be anyone that was a match for Ling Han? You guys have forgotten one more thing. Ling Han raised his foot, and he kicked the damaged dog collar over. Wang Wan grabbed the collar with a flip of his hand, not daring to pause for even a moment as he fled with his tail between his legs. Everyone watched on, feeling that though Ling Han had been domineering for once, what would happen next? Though the academy had a rule that high-level students could not make a move against low-level students, it was impossible for Ling Han to remain in the shattering void tier forever. Once he advanced into the low extreme of the mountain river tier, then those at the peak of the low extreme would be able to forcefully challenge him. You were a 4-star genius, yes, but the academy similarly did not lack 3-star geniuses and 2-star geniuses. They could still teach you a lesson that would make you wish you were dead. Furthermore, could you stay in the academy forever? Everyone shook their heads. Obviously, Ling Han did not have much time left. Luo clan residence. Luo Hongdao summoned Luo Ba over, and asked, have you finished refining the blood tier stone? Yes, Lord Patriarch. Luo Ba was brimming with confidence. His current battle prowess had reached 21 stars, causing him to feel a strong sense of expansion. That lowly commoner has become Zhao Luan's sworn enemy, and he is destined to die soon, Luo Hongdao said. You should immediately go and challenge that lowly commoner. Otherwise, if he dies at Zhao Luan's hands, you won't have the chance to wash away your humiliation. Furthermore, if you help Zhao Luan kill that lowly commoner, we might be able to climb up the tree that is Great General Zhao. Yes, Lord Patriarch. Luo Ba sneered. He couldn't wait to kill Ling Han. Chapter 926. On the second day after Zhao Luan delivered his gift, Luo Ba issued a duel invitation, wanting to have a duel to the death with Ling Han. It wasn't a normal spar, but a duel to the death. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, if both sides had the same level of martial art, such as the low extreme of the Mountain River tier or the Shattering Void tier, then they could spar at any time, anywhere. As long as one side wanted to fight, there was no need for the other side's consent. However, such a spar couldn't result in death or disability, or the academy would investigate. Thus, if a duel to the death was to be carried out, then a public duel must first be arranged, and the other side's consent could be obtained before it could begin. In this way, no matter what the final result was, neither side would have to be responsible. However, after so many years, the number of duels to the death was pitifully low. A duel to the death, everyone in the academy was shocked. Although few could afford to challenge a cultivator from a small world, Ling Han was different. He was an emperor that had come from opening the sky, which meant that his strength was strong enough to reach 20 stars. And Luo Ba should be more aware of the gap in strength between him and Ling Han. At that time, he had been slapped twice by the latter, and he didn't have the slightest temper, but now he proposed a duel to the death with Ling Han. What was wrong with him? Could it be that Luo Ba's strength had greatly improved, and he believed that he could defeat Ling Han? Now that Luo Ba had made his move, it was up to Ling Han to accept it. Ling Han's answer was very straightforward. He'd fight if he paid. The appearance fee was 10 true origin stones, and if he won, he'd have to pay another 100 true origin stones. He would sign the agreement first before fighting. As expected, this guy hadn't changed at all. After knowing Ling Han's answer, everyone felt it was funny. He obviously had a strong opponent like Xiao Luan, yet he was still unaffected. What was this guy's brain made of? It was too thick, wasn't it? This time, Luo Ba also responded very quickly, and agreed to Ling Han's condition. Both sides agreed to fight 3 days later. Ling Han could be sure that Luo Ba's strength had definitely improved greatly, which was why he would fight him to the death. Otherwise, it was impossible that he would give away true origin stones and his life. How could there be such a good person in the world? But he was unafraid. Aside from him, no one knew what level his battle prowess had reached. Strength 17 stars, battle prowess 25 stars in the Shattering Void tier, a single star was akin to heaven and earth, and from 20 stars onwards, the increase of battle prowess became incomparably difficult, which also meant that with every increase of 1 star, the gap in battle prowess was also incomparably huge. Luo Ba was able to not only charge up to 20 stars of battle prowess in a short few days, but had even surpassed 5 stars. Who would believe that? Ling Han's life did not change at all. He was very curious about the white-haired old man in the library. He had asked people before, but no one could tell him the origin of the old man Su. They only knew that he had been in the library for a long time, and every time, he looked like he was about to die, but he did not die. It was very strange. When he arrived at the library, he saw that old man Su was still dozing off, just like last time. He bowed and said, "Greetings, senior." Old man Su raised his head and glanced at him. His eyes suddenly shone brightly, but then they dimmed again. He coughed and said, "Young man, you've mastered the 6 laws, return to 1. Ling Han was shocked and blurted out, "How did senior know?" "Ho ho, if that were not the case, how could your power possibly have increased so much in a short month?" Old man Su retorted. Could this old man determine his specific power? Ling Han nodded, and said, "Senior's judgment is indeed brilliant. Junior is impressed." Old man Su chuckled, and said, "However, Junior, your situation is not very good." Ling Han also smiled, and said, "No matter, Junior should still be able to hold on." Old man Su stared at Ling Han, and only after a long while did he say, "This old man has a technique that can't be considered very powerful. Are you interested in learning it?" This old man was definitely an elite. If he said that it wasn't very powerful, then he was definitely being modest. Ling Han hurriedly said, "Please enlighten me, senior." Old man Su closed his eyes as if he was taking a nap. Just when Ling Han thought he was really going to fall asleep, he suddenly opened his mouth and said, "This secret technique is called the 7-kill subduing soul technique. Using the power of one's spirit to attack the opponent, it can cause the opponent to fall into a temporary state of paralysis. The stronger and more resilient your spirit is, the greater the effect it can have on the opponent." Ling Han was instantly pleasantly surprised. His spirit was very strong and resilient, but he didn't have any technique that could allow his spirit to display its effects. Under the effect of the reincarnation tea, his spirit was far stronger than an ordinary cultivator in the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, and he had also cultivated the 2nd layer of the indestructible Heaven Scroll, so his spirit was also becoming more resilient day by day. If he learned the 7-kill subduing soul technique, then even mountain river tier cultivators could be affected and paralyzed by him if they were caught off guard. And what was the greatest effect of this? The instant of paralysis, no matter how short, would definitely cause the opponent to fall into a state of unconsciousness, and he could then draw the opponent into the Black Tower. Once he entered the Black Tower, he could dominate everything. Say, how could Ling Han not be pleasantly surprised? However, Senior, I have no intention of taking you as my disciple, Ling Han said. Old Man Su smiled, and said, it's just a technique that's not very pleasing to my eyes. Just take it as me teaching it to you because I find it pleasing to your eyes. Thank you, Senior, Ling Han said solemnly. He paused, and then continued, in the future, if there's anything I can do to help, I definitely won't refuse. Old Man Su chuckled, nodded, and said, perhaps there will really be a day when you can help me. Ling Han knew that there was no hatred without reason in this world, and there was no love without reason either. If it was said that Old Man Su had taught him the 7-kill subduing soul technique because he cherished talent, Ling Han didn't really believe it. After all, he had only seen it twice. However, this secret technique sounded very suitable for him, and he couldn't bring himself to refuse. Come here. Old Man Su nodded at Ling Han. Ling Han walked over, and Old Man Su stretched out a finger. There was a ball of white light flickering on his fingertip, and he pressed it down on his forehead. This was a vital point. If Old Man Su had any killing intent, then with a light press, Ling Han wouldn't even have the chance to hide in the Black Tower. His soul would directly be destroyed. Ling Han chose to believe. Thus, he stood as steady as a mountain. Old Man Su's finger pressed down. Wang, instantly, innumerable characters surged into Ling Han's mind. Every character was endlessly complicated, and couldn't be expressed or explained with words. It was as if they were a part of the Tao of heaven and earth, a kind of regulation that could only be understood, and couldn't be expressed in words. Ling Han sat down, and couldn't help but fumble and probe. Every bit of progress he made, he couldn't help but be overjoyed. However, just as he was lost in thought, he felt a pat on his shoulder, and his thoughts were interrupted. He opened his eyes, and saw Old Man Su smiling at him, and saying, "You've already meditated for 3 days, so you should have an appointment today, right?" Ling Han was startled. 3 days had already passed, so why did it feel like only an instant had passed? He nodded, and said, "Thank you, Senior. I'll come and visit another day. Go." Old Man Su waved his hand. Chapter 927. Jiang Yufeng was naturally at the Heaven Sword Palace, while Chen Ruijing was exploring various places. He was a cultivator, so he needed to improve his abilities through battle. As for the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, she was currently living in seclusion in the Water Element Valley, a place that was about 1,500 kilometers away from here. He decided to immediately go and find the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. He could take his time overthrowing the 5 sects, but he had already let this wife of his for 10,000 years, so he didn't want to wait a moment longer. He exited the Han Lin Pavilion, and was just about to set off when he saw a carriage blocking his path. He saw a woman in azure curtsying slightly from the carriage, and saying, "Grandmaster Ling, my wife invites you." "Your wife?" Ling Han was surprised. "Who?" "Grandmaster Ling. Won't you know when you get on the carriage?" The woman in azure pursed her lips into a smile, revealing a beautiful and flirtatious expression. She was dressed like a maidservant, but even a maidservant possessed such a seductive charm, so what kind of seductive beauty would her master be? Any ordinary person would definitely be filled with endless fantasies, and gladly agree to board the carriage to see the true appearance of this madam. But how could Ling Han be in the mood to do so at this moment? He shook his head, and said, "Then forget it." With a flick of his sleeves, he swaggered off. "Hey, hey, hey!" The woman in azure hurriedly leaped down from the carriage, blocking Ling Han's path. Moreover, she stuck out her perky chest, almost knocking into Ling Han's body, forcing him to take a step back. If a woman became feisty, men really had to be careful. Otherwise, if her chest touched you, it would definitely be because you wanted to take advantage of her. That was definitely the case. Grandmaster Ling, my madam is one of the most beautiful women in this world. Who knows how many talented people line up to see my madam, but that also depends on my madam's mood. The woman in azure was slightly proud, and said, now that my madam has taken the initiative to invite you, you actually refuse? Aren't you afraid that my madam will be sad? What does that have to do with me? Ling Han asked calmly. Then I won't allow it, the woman in azure said. She stretched out a hand to grab Ling Han, and said, Grandmaster Ling, since you are not willing to obediently board the carriage, I can only force you to submit. Boom, a terrifying aura surged out of her body. She was actually an elite of the Sun-Moon tier. Ling Han was astonished. This mighty elite of the Sun-Moon tier could go anywhere, yet she insisted on becoming someone's servant. However, he was naturally unafraid either. He clenched his fist and punched at her. Because he had cultivated the lightning sword technique and comprehended a sliver of the might of heavenly tribulation, his fist was not only extraordinarily fast, but it was also imbued with the might of lightning. Its destructive power was astonishing. Lightning flashed wildly. The woman in azure couldn't help but look astonished. However, it was already too late for her to withdraw her attack, and her slender hand just so happened to collide with Ling Han's fist. Peng! There was a heavy sound, and the two of them both retreated. This woman was at the late stage of the Sun-Moon tier, and she wasn't a multi-star genius. Thus, her power was only equal to Ling Han's. However, Ling Han had imbued his fist with the power of heavenly tribulation. How astonishing was this destructive power! Instantly, the woman in azure's slender hand was drenched with blood. I never thought that Grandmaster Ling is actually an elite of cultivation. The woman in azure channeled her cultivation technique and stopped the bleeding. There was a hint of surprise on her face, but she didn't panic. However, since Madam has given an order, Grandmaster Ling should obediently cooperate. Her eyes widened, and Wang, two suns and moons appeared. However, they didn't exude a sliver of heat. Instead, they were filled with a gloomy coldness. Frost appeared in the surroundings and fell down. The suns and moons only looked like the suns and moons in the sky. Some people cultivated the power of ice, so the suns and moons were naturally incredibly cold, exuding a boundless power of cold. Outside of the suns and moons, Ling Han nodded internally. The level of cultivation here was indeed stronger than on the Joint Peace Planet. At least on the Joint Peace Planet, only Venerable Trinity could release the power of the Eternal River. The others could only use the power of the mountains, rivers, suns, moons, and stars. This kind of coldness almost froze Ling Han's blood, and even his body was about to be sealed in ice. However, if he wanted to defeat him, this was far from enough. His whole body exuded the light of lightning, and the lightning instantly blocked the power of ice a meter away from his body. Ice Seal Spear, the woman in azure exclaimed softly. Boundless cold air condensed, forming an ice spear that was 3 meters long. Then, she suddenly pierced towards Ling Han. The cold wind swept out, transforming into countless ice blades. Ling Han pointed a finger, and a boundless sword intent manifested, carrying with it the power of lightning, and greeted the ice blades. Pa, 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 all the ice blades were shattered. Ling Han stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and said, "Is it enough?" The woman in azure shook the ice spear, and said, "Not enough." She once again attacked, the long spear unceasingly stabbing, and could even be used as a staff. Under the infusion of martial intent, multiple divine patterns appeared on the ice spear, interweaving to form a brilliant light. Ling Han humphed, and also unleashed his battle prowess. As his fists bombarded, they continuously smashed onto the ice spear. Ka, ka, ka. Cracks appeared on the ice spear, and after withstanding a heavy punch from Ling Han, it finally broke into pieces bit by bit. Meanwhile, the woman in Azure's face was also deathly pale, and her hair was disheveled. There was not the slightest bit of alluring beauty left on her. She couldn't help but be stunned. Ling Han was only at the early stage of the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, yet he had forcefully defeated her head-on. His strength was far too astonishing. However, she refused to admit defeat. Instead, she retrieved a divine seal, and was about to slap it onto her body. "Qing Luo, that's enough," an enchanting voice traveled out from within the carriage. It was none other than the leader of the Treasure Forest Pavilion of Big Trade City, Lin Yuqi. A fragrant fragrance wafted through the air, and the carriage door had already opened. A beautiful woman with an impressive figure stood there, and just by standing there, one would be filled with endless fantasies. Moreover, it was clear that this woman was extremely adept at maximizing her charm. This wasn't a casual standing, but rather a slight tilt of her slender body, which completely highlighted the curves of her entire body. Truly, it wasn't the wine that intoxicated one, but the wine that intoxicated one. "Grandmaster Ling, I'm not some ferocious beast. Are you afraid that I'll eat you?" She giggled, and her voice was like the swaying of a flower. It was a seductive and enchanting sight. With her saying this, Ling Han naturally couldn't just walk away. He smiled, and said, "May I know what advice you have for me, madam?" "Come into the carriage first," Lin Yuqi said with a seductive smile. Ling Han hesitated slightly, but still nodded and boarded the carriage. Lin Yuqi turned around and entered the carriage first. She was wearing a long red dress, which was well-tailored and tightly wrapped around her perfect figure. As he stood behind her, he could clearly feel her willowy waist swaying gracefully. Moreover, her round and plump buttocks were also tightly wrapped in the fabric. With every step she took, a voluptuous buttocks would be completely outlined. Her peach-shaped bosom was so tempting that it could make one drool. Ling Han could be considered to have seen many beauties, and in terms of seduction, Empress Luan Xing was more than 10 times more seductive than her. However, in terms of how to express her charm in the most provocative way, this woman was definitely the best. Even he didn't dare to do too much, fearing that he would become aroused. Reading on a cell phone was more refreshing. Chapter 928. Who would have thought that before the two main characters had even started fighting, someone else would appear out of nowhere? Hong. Luo Ba and Yi Qingyun exchanged a blow, and a dazzling light exploded from between them like the Big Bang of the universe, sweeping up a hurricane that swept out in all directions. This was a clash of battle prowess that surpassed 20 stars of shattering void tier, and finally stirred up a small wave in the immortal realm. Tang, 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 the two of them retreated at the same time. Neither more nor less, both retreated 11 steps. With this blow, the two of them were actually evenly matched. What, Luo Ba has actually become so strong. That's Yi Qingyun of the East Institution, the number 1 in the Shattering Void tier. I heard that he reached 20 stars of Shattering Void tier a few years ago, but never broke through to the Mountain River tier. Obviously, he wants to go further in the Shattering Void tier. Who knows, his current battle prowess has already surpassed 20 stars. Everyone exclaimed in shock. Yi Qingyun's strength was within everyone's expectations. After all, he was the number 1 in the Shattering Void tier division of the East Institution, and was one of the young elites of the Imperial capital over 40 years ago, just like Luo Ba of this batch. But after cultivating for 40 more years, he actually couldn't suppress Luo Ba. Too shocking. No wonder Luo Ba dared to issue a deathmatch challenge to Ling Han. His strength had actually increased a few times, no, more than a dozen times, in a short few days. Ha, as expected, battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void tier. Yi Qingyun laughed loudly, and immediately shot out again, blasting towards Luo Ba. Peng, peng. The two of them exchanged another 2 blows, and still couldn't decide the victor. Is that enough? Luo Ba asked coldly. His target was Ling Han. That's 3 moves already, Yi Qingyun said, still not fully satisfied. Alright, when you're done, we can still spar again. He felt that he had encountered a bottleneck. He was invincible in the Shattering Void tier, and could no longer improve. But Luo Ba actually reached battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void tier, giving him a glimmer of hope. If he continued to battle with Yi Qingyun, maybe he could break through the shackles. Though Luo Ba was extremely displeased, he also knew that Yi Qingyun was a strong opponent, and the two of them might have to fight for a few days and nights before a victor could be decided. Now, where would they have the time to waste? He could not wait to defeat and kill Ling Han. He walked quickly to the square halfway up the mountain. Looking at Ling Han, who was resting with his eyes closed, he sneered, "I really didn't expect you to dare accept my challenge." If it had not been for the battle with Yi Qingyun previously, everyone would definitely say that Luo Ba was boasting shamelessly. He was an emperor that had come from splitting open the skies, so he definitely had battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void tier. If he still had the supportive power of the nation, breaking through to 20 stars would be a piece of cake. But now, everyone knew that Luo Ba's strength had reached 21 stars of Shattering Void tier. Even if this strength wasn't his own and was obtained from refining a blood tier stone, it didn't change the fact that he was extremely formidable now. Does Ling Han still dare to accept the challenge? A life and death battle did not necessarily have to determine life and death. It was entirely possible to give up midway. Life and death battle meant that if life and death were to be determined, the other party would not have to take any responsibility at all. Ling Han was pondering the profound mysteries of the 7-kill subduing soul technique. In the eyes of others, Luo Ba was so powerful that he could not even resist, but in his eyes, so what if he had battle prowess of 21 stars? He could kill him with a casual slap, so he needed to pay attention to him. His thoughts were interrupted, so he was naturally not in a good mood, which was immediately apparent on his face. The others didn't know, and thought that Ling Han was afraid. They all nodded internally, thinking that he might not be able to fight this battle. Ling Han stretched out his hand, and asked, "Where's my appearance fee?" Pooh! Instantly, a great many people spluttered. You really wanted money so badly. Didn't you see how powerful Luo Ba was? Yet Luo Ba laughed loudly, and casually tossed out 10 true origin stones. He said coldly, "This will be used to make arrangements for your funeral." Sigh. After extorting 2,000 true origin stones from the Luo clan, these mere 10 true origin stones seemed to have lost their appeal all of a sudden. However, no matter how small an ant's leg was, it was still meat. It would be a waste if he didn't take it. One could never have too much money. Ling Han put away the true origin stones, and said, "There's still 100. You can still win against me?" Luo Ba was instantly angered. Ling Han snickered, and said, "Rules are rules. What's with all this nonsense? Are you going to fight or not? If not, I'm going home to sleep." Fight! Luo Ba gritted his teeth, and with another wave of his hand, took out 100 true origin stones. This time, Ling Han didn't collect them. After all, he hadn't won yet. However, this was only a matter of time. "Can we fight now?" Luo Ba asked darkly, killing intent boiling in his heart. "You can talk all you want now, but you'll be in trouble later." In the academy, there were also a few important figures present to spectate, but they stood far away. For example, Luo Kaifeng. A junior from his clan was fighting a battle to the death, so he naturally had to pay attention. There was also Zhang Deman. He had a good impression of Ling Han, and wanted to take him in as a disciple. The other was Wei Qianshu. Ever since he had been dragged into the battle by Luo Kaifeng last time, he had also become interested in Ling Han. Battles to the death were already very rare, not to mention that both sides of the battle possessed peak battle prowess. There were many spectators, and the students from the Shattering Void Tier division of the North Institution were the most numerous. There were also some people from the other three institutions, but the total number was still less than that of the North institution. Fight, why do you have so much nonsense to say? Are you afraid of death? Ling Han said with a smile. Luo Ba was almost angered to death. It's obviously you who's spouting so much nonsense, all right? However, the battle had finally begun. He would slowly torture Ling Han, and let him suffer in agony. He actually dared to slap him. Xiao, he pounced, and struck out with a palm. The image of the divine beast Dijiang appeared again, which had a great deterrent force. Ling Han placed his left hand behind his back, and stood very casually. When Luo Ba pounced close, he waved a palm at the latter. Multiple divine patterns intertwined, forming an incredibly complicated pattern. Earth overturning Sealpeng. The palm struck out, and Luo Ba was sent flying without any suspense. Then, his body disintegrated in midair, splitting into pieces as a rain of blood splattered everywhere. His corpse fell to the ground, his expression full of disbelief, as if he was wondering how he had been killed with a single slap when he obviously already had battle prowess of 21 stars of shattering void tier. This did not make sense, nor did it make sense. All around, there was dead silence, and only the whistling of the mountain wind could be heard. Who would have thought that the previously awe-inspiring Luo Ba would actually be killed with a single slap? This was really a fuck you elite of 21 stars of shattering void tier, and not a fly. No, Luo Ba was definitely not a fly. On the contrary, he was extremely strong, and was evenly matched with Yi Qingyun after exchanging 3 blows. This was enough to prove his strength. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. That meant that Ling Han was even more powerful. What kind of battle prowess was this? 22 stars. From 20 stars and above, how strong could one become with every increase in battle prowess of 1 star? Actually, everyone had no idea, because this only existed in theory and legends, so how could it be measured in reality? The corner of Yi Qingyun's mouth twitched, and his whole body was covered in cold sweat. Ling Han's strength made him not even have the courage to challenge him. Chapter 929. I knew it. In the distance, Li Weiwei waved her fist excitedly. She guessed that Ling Han's battle prowess had possibly reached 23 stars of shattering void tier, so with an advantage of 2 stars, he would definitely be able to easily crush his opponent. Ji Yun's face was also filled with shock. Before she came, her battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier was already invincible in this cultivation level. 21 stars was practically like a dream, but today, not only had 2 of them appeared, one of them had even been directly killed with a single palm strike. Could it be that Ling Han was actually in the mountain river tier? Bah! Luo Kaifeng rushed out like a gust of wind. His face was ferocious, as if he wanted to eat someone. Luo Ba was the strongest prodigy of the Luo clan in the last 100 years, and that was why the clan had spent a great deal of effort to obtain a blood tier stone for him to refine. This was something that could be used to a certain extent even in the mountain river tier or the sun moon tier. But now, he was swatted to death like a fly. How could he accept this? His eyes were scarlet red, and he shouted, "Audacious thief, you actually dare to commit murder in the academy, this seat will suppress and kill you." He brazenly attacked, one hand opened, and slapped towards Ling Han. When a sun-moon tier cultivator attacked, even if he was only at the low extreme, how terrifying would his might be? If Ling Han was struck, he would definitely be smashed into pieces. How could a physique on the level of level 1 godly metal withstand the attack of a great elite of the sun-moon tier? Too shameless. Li Weiwei stomped her foot in the distance, but she was too far away to stop him. Ji Yun also frowned slightly, but consoled, "Don't worry, the elites of the academy will not let him do as he pleases." That's right, when Luo Kaifeng attacked, Zhang Deman and Wei Qianshu also attacked at the same time, blocking him and saying, "Brother Luo, please control yourself." The two of them joined forces and easily blocked Luo Kaifeng's attack. Ling Han's expression was calm, without a hint of nervousness. This was the academy. If Luo Kaifeng was allowed to have his way, it would really be a joke. There were definitely still elites at the high extreme of the day-night tier, or even consummate level, spying on the academy from the shadows. They could attack at any moment. It was just that there was no need for them to show themselves just then. He picked up the true essence stones on the ground. These were the stakes he had won. It was a pity that Luo Ba's corpse could not be taken away. There should be many good things in his spatial spirit tool. This kid killed someone from my Luo family. Are we just going to let him off? Luo Kaifeng sneered. He also knew that he couldn't kill Ling Han on the spot. He was just pretending to be furious in preparation for what he was about to say. An old fox like him might be impulsive, but he would immediately calm down. In that instant, he had an idea. Zhang Deman snorted and said, "This is a life and death battle. Both sides have agreed to it. If they die, they can only blame themselves for being inferior." "You are mistaken." Luo Kaifeng shook his head, and said solemnly, "Before this, I clearly heard Luo Ba say to stop and admit defeat, but that despicable brat did not care, and insisted on attacking. This is not in accordance with the rules of a battle to the death." Fuck! Hearing Luo Kaifeng's words, everyone cursed in their minds. They had seen shameless people before, but they had never seen such a shameless person. Was this person really an elite of the Sun Moon tier? How could he be so shameless? Luo Ba was insta-killed by Ling Han, so how could he have had time to admit defeat and surrender? Yet Luo Kaifeng did not care at all. At their level, would they still care about the opinions of others? If they were displeased, they could just kill them directly. Why didn't I hear it? Zhang Deman said in displeasure. Then it can only be said that Brother Zhang's cultivation level is still a bit lacking, Luo Kaifeng said with a smile. He looked at Wei Qianshu, his eyes sinister. Brother Wei must have heard it, right? Wei Qianshu was startled. Luo Kaifeng's words were filled with threat. If he said no, that would be directly opposing the Luo clan. He himself was unafraid, but though he did not have any powerful background, and had practically relied on his own strength to cultivate to his current cultivation level, it did not mean that he did not have descendants. It was not like he did not know the Luo clan's style of doing things. They were really capable of doing anything. Was conscience more important, or family more important? Was a cultivator from a small world more important, or was family more important? Wei Qianshu sighed internally, and said, "I seem to have heard Luo Ba admit defeat." He used the word "seem," which could be considered as giving himself some leeway. Zhang Deman was instantly seething with anger. This was too shameless, but he was the same as Wei Qianshu. They were both lone cultivators, and did not have any party behind them to support them. He knew that if the Luo clan did not care about the cost, they could completely turn the truth upside down. "Luo Kaifeng, aren't you afraid that if you do too many guilty things, there will be ghosts knocking on your door in the middle of the night, and you won't be able to sleep?" he said darkly. "Hee, we are cultivators, so what is there to be afraid of?" Luo Kaifeng said indifferently, and then turned to Wei Qianshu. "Brother Wei, this boy has violated the rules of the academy, and should be expelled, right?" When everyone heard this, they all felt that Luo Kaifeng was very ruthless. Without the protection of the Scarlet Heaven Academy, what was Ling Han? Any mountain river tier cultivator could kill him. Ling Han did not bat an eyelid. Could the Luo clan cover the sky with one hand in the academy? Wei Qianshu, meanwhile, was in a very difficult position. This Luo Kaifeng not only dragged him into the water, but also wanted him to go all the way, but he had already gone against his will just now, and now there was no turning back. Otherwise, he would not be able to please both sides. He gritted his teeth, and was just about to speak when he saw a white shadow flash by, and there was a large white cat on Ling Han's shoulder. There was nothing strange about cats. There were many people who raised demonic tigers in the imperial capital, such as the glazed flame green pattern tiger, ice plain tiger, and some could even reach the height of the mountain river tier. In comparison, the cat in front of them was only in the shattering void tier. But the problem was, everyone in the academy knew that there was a cat that could not be provoked. Luo Kaifeng was also startled. He naturally knew that the headmaster raised a cat, and spoiled it to no end. Whoever dared to touch this cat, he would destroy them. But this cat actually squatted on Ling Han's shoulder. What did this mean? Coincidentally, or, he couldn't help but shiver. If there was a heavenly body tier elite supporting Ling Han, then the entire Luo family combined wouldn't be enough to be killed by a single finger of the other party. Meow. The large white cat swept a displeased glance at everyone. Don't you know that I'm hungry? Why aren't you letting Ling Han go home to prepare food for me? Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, I was expelled from the academy, right? Large white cat, then you'll follow me from now on, and you'll have plenty of meat. Meow. The large white cat nodded proudly. Demonic beasts of the shattering void tier obviously developed intelligence, and it wasn't strange for them to have such a human-like reaction, but Luo Kaifeng and Wei Qianshu were so scared that their guts almost came out. If they let Ling Han abduct the large white cat, once the headmaster flew into a rage, who could stand up to him? Grandpa Cat, come here quickly, I also have delicious food here, Luo Kaifeng said hurriedly. Luo Kaifeng hurriedly said. Since Ling Han could use food to tempt this demon cat, why couldn't he? The large white cat flew into a sudden rage. Did he really think that it was a gluttonous cat? Did having milk make it a mother? If it weren't for the fact that Ling Han, this human, had lowered his stance enough and was sincere enough, with such a tsundere, no, proud existence, how would it agree to be friends with him? Who did you think you were? Chapter 930. Meow. The big white cat meowed, and charged towards Luo Kaifeng. Its speed was very fast, and it was almost unrivaled in the shattering void tier, but the opponent was in the sun-moon tier, so he naturally couldn't pose any threat to Luo Kaifeng. However, the problem was that Luo Kaifeng dared not offend this cat demon, and only kept dodging. A sun-moon tier elite was actually chased around by a shattering void tier elite. Probably only this cat demon could do that. After chasing for a while, the big white cat leaped back onto Ling Han's shoulder, proudly combing its whiskers and flashing its claws, looking like, whoever dares to bully this king will take care of you. Zhang Deman couldn't help but laugh. Who would have thought that Ling Han would actually become friends with the big white cat that no one could afford to offend? He coughed, smiled, and said, I still insist on my own opinion. Luo Ba didn't admit defeat, so Ling Han isn't at fault. If the two of you have no objections, let Ling Han go back. What else could Luo Kaifeng say? That was the dean's pet beast, and he was valued even more than his descendant. Even if the ancestor of the Luo family was here, he would have to admit defeat today. He snorted hatefully, picked up Luo Ba's dismembered corpse, put it into his spatial spirit tool, and leaped away, leaving directly. Wei Qianshu sighed again. This time, he really didn't know what to do. He shook his head, and also flew away. Thank you, senior, for speaking up for justice, Ling Han said sincerely to Zhang Deman with clasped hands. Zhang Deman laughed, and said, even if I didn't make a move, with this cat here, no one in the entire academy would dare to touch you. The big white cat proudly raised its head. This king was just that mighty. I still have to thank senior, Ling Han said. Zhang Deman nodded. This boy knew when to advance and retreat, abided by etiquette, and had a good temperament. Talent in martial art was one thing, but temperament was equally important. Otherwise, it would only be a disaster in the future. Go, he said with a smile. A dead student had to be dealt with, but this had nothing to do with Ling Han. Ling Han nodded, cupped his hands again, and said, this student will take his leave. He left with the big white cat. That fellow had already scratched his head more than once. Does it not know that this king is hungry? After Ling Han left, the spectators naturally dispersed as well. Now there was another big piece of news. Ling Han's battle prowess surpassed 21 stars of shattering void tier. Brother Yi. Mo Junren patted Yi Qingyun. Yi Qingyun was in a daze, his whole body drenched in cold sweat. He suddenly came back to his senses, and said, I kept thinking, if I were in Luoba's shoes, how would I block that palm? The result is death no matter what. Mo Junren couldn't help but laugh. Big brother Yi, you can also choose not to fight with that freak. Yi Qingyun's eyes instantly lit up, and he said, that's right. I have already cultivated to the end of the shattering void tier. With my talent, if there is no special opportunity, it would be impossible for me to advance further and break through to 22 stars of battle prowess. But if I break through to the mountain river tier, I will have room for improvement again. That's right. That's why we use 100 years to break through to 20 stars of shattering void tier. Though this limit is very important, it is definitely not the most important, Mo Junren said. Cultivating to the limit of the immortal level, that is true strength. Yi Qingyun breathed out a long sigh of relief, his confidence completely returning. He said, Junren, you are the one with great wisdom that appears to be stupidity. Am I? Mo Junren smiled. I am only a dissolute person who likes to play with the flowers. At a certain place. Detestable old witch, let Nyo out. A strange, wah wah wah, sound rang out, and there was a thunderous knocking sound on the door. Nyo wants to see Ling Han, ugly old woman, let Nyo out. Hu Nyo's whole body was leaning against the door, her small hands grabbing onto the lintel like a monkey. Nonsense. The old woman in cyan grabbed at empty air, and Hu Nyo was immediately sucked over, unable to resist. Nyo is very angry, Nyo wants to become bad, Nyo doesn't want to cultivate anymore. Hu Nyo puffed out her cheeks, her hands on her hips. You little girl, ever since you returned to the Rock Palace, when have you cultivated seriously? The old woman in cyan sighed. Yun only infused the soul of martial art into your body, but how much you can refine and digest will still depend on your own efforts. Nyo just doesn't want to cultivate, Nyo wants to see Ling Han. Hu Nyo wasn't going to be reasonable, nor was she afraid, and glared at the old woman. The old woman in cyan felt a headache coming on. The 3 supreme secret techniques of the Rock Palace could only be cultivated by the palace mistress, because only the palace mistress inherited the unique soul of martial art. Without this as a foundation, even if the secret technique was placed in front of you, it would be useless. How did she encounter such an unreliable heir? She had interacted with Hu Nyo for more than a year, after all, and had a considerable understanding of this girl. She knew that being fierce was useless. This girl simply didn't know what fear was. Fine, I promise you. As long as you cultivate to the Genesis tier, I will allow you to see that brat, but only for 3 days at most, and then you have to return. Our Rock Palace has a great enemy, and only if you cultivate the 3 great secret techniques can you resist. Sigh, not letting you out is also for the sake of your safety. The old woman took a step back. Hu Nyo counted with her fingers, and said, fine, then Nyo will use 3 years to cultivate to the Genesis tier. She tilted her head to look at the old woman, and said, damn old woman, hurry up and leave. If you stay here, Nyo will get angry when she sees you, and won't be in the mood to cultivate. The old woman in cyan couldn't help but shake her head. She was also an overlord-level figure, but she didn't have the slightest bit of temper towards Hu Nyo, which could be considered as one thing restraining another. Hurry up and leave, don't hinder Nyo's cultivation. Hu Nyo waved her hand, her expression full of impatience. The old woman in cyan left helplessly, but Hu Nyo was finally willing to cultivate properly, which made her breathe a sigh of relief. This little brat really gave her a headache. However, in that small world, a genius actually appeared. There was nothing special about that human, but his son was a genius in martial art. If it were not for the fact that the Rock Palace didn't accept male disciples, she really didn't want to miss this opportunity. The Heaven Saint Palace is currently recruiting disciples, and has a good relationship with our Rock Palace. If we provide them with a genius heir, they will definitely be very grateful, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. She quickly made up her mind. The Luo clan. Luo Hongdao stared at Luo Ba's corpse, his hands clenched tightly, his eyes flickering with fury. The most outstanding heir of the younger generation of the Luo clan was killed just like that. Though nurturing a shattering void tier cultivator didn't need to pay a high price, the blood tier stone was really precious, and even thinking about it made his heart ache. We definitely can't spare that lowly commoner, he said hatefully. Lord Patriarch, that brat seems to have some relationship with Fu Hui, Luo Kaifeng said. When he spoke of Fu Hui's name, his body trembled slightly. The name of an elite of the heavenly body tier seemed to have some magical power. It was more refreshing to read on one's phone. Chapter 931. Miss Han is Madam's distant niece, the young servant girl said. She was very nosy, and she continued to talk about the relationship between Lin Yuqi and Han Xinyan. In any case, the 2 women were very close. Otherwise, Han Xinyan wouldn't have come to such a small city for no reason. After leading Ling Han to a courtyard, the young servant girl curtsied, and said, Miss Han should be meditating inside, so I don't dare to disturb her. Young master, you should knock on the door yourself. After saying this, she turned around and left. How irresponsible. Ling Han knocked on the door, and only after a while did he hear the sound of footsteps. Creak. The door opened, and a person who was almost completely naked walked in. It was Han Xinyan. Fuck, even she wanted to tempt him. Ah! Han Xinyan suddenly screamed. Pang! The door immediately closed. Ling Han rubbed his nose. He had almost been knocked into by the door. However, after a while, the door opened again, and Han Xinyan stormed out. This time, she was naturally wearing clothes, and she was holding a sword in her hand. She slashed at Ling Han, and said, How dare you? Ling Han hurriedly dodged. This woman was indeed very talented in alchemy, but she didn't have the corresponding strength in cultivation. Ling Han merely released the power of heaven's might, and her body immediately went limp. How could she still have the strength to attack? Don't misunderstand, he said with a smile. I'm only here to teach you the refinement method of the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill. Han Xinyan paused for a moment before slashing a few more times. Only then did she resentfully sheath her sword, and chided, Evil thief. Ling Han sighed, and said, I didn't do anything to you, did I? I just knocked on the door normally, and it was you who ran out completely naked. Han Xinyan couldn't help but blush. She had a bad habit, and that was that she liked to strip naked when she was studying pill recipes. Only then would she be able to gain inspiration. Moreover, this was Lin Yuqi's inner courtyard, and there wasn't a single man here. Thus, she naturally wasn't afraid of exposing herself. However, who would have thought that a man would suddenly appear and strip her naked? How humiliating. She glared at Ling Han, and said, You're never allowed to mention this matter again. She wasn't a rude and unreasonable person, and she knew that Ling Han wasn't in the wrong. However, she was naturally extremely displeased. Those with small breasts were also narrow-minded. Ling Han thought to himself. This woman was truly flat-chested. In truth, he wouldn't be able to see anything even if she stripped naked. If she only had breasts, she could completely pass herself off as a man. Fine, he said calmly. He was also afraid that she would latch onto him and say things like, If you strip me naked, I'll marry no one but you. He directly tossed a book over, and said, This is the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit Pill. Study it on your own for now. I still have some important matters to attend to, so I have to leave Big Trade City for a while. If there's anything you don't understand, you can write it down and ask me when I return. Han Xinyan was furious. We're both level 8 alchemists, yet you're acting like you want to guide me? Do you think I'm a junior? However, now that she had obtained the pill recipe for the Berserk Blood Spirit pill, she couldn't bring herself to fall out with Ling Han. Thus, she could only angrily put the pill recipe away. At this moment, she really didn't dare to stubbornly refuse. Ling Han waved his hand and left the Treasure Forest Pavilion. He then set out toward the border region between the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. This was where the two-realm battlefield was located. There was a connection point between the Netherworld and the Immortal Realm here, and the Netherworld could invade the Immortal Realm from this place. Conversely, the Immortal Realm could also enter the Netherworld from this place. The cloud-piercing shuttle was no longer suitable for traveling between planets. Fortunately, Ling Han had already grasped the star-plucking step. Added with the lightning technique that he had learned from the Heavenly Tribulation, his current speed was astonishingly fast. A mere 12 days later, he arrived at the two-realm battlefield. However, before he set out, he first refined a Berserk Blood Spirit pill. It took him 3 days to digest the medicinal effects of the pill, and the red sun inside his body also suddenly expanded, allowing him to advance into the middle stage of the low extreme. This kind of alchemical pill was called Berserk, because its medicinal effects were indeed berserk. Even though Ling Han's physique had reached the level of level 6 godly metal, his skin and flesh were still lacerated by the impact of the pill. In fact, a few of his godly bones were even broken. It was no wonder that unless one was at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, they could only consume this pill under the care of an elite. Otherwise, they would only be blasted to death by the berserk medicinal effects. If they died from consuming this pill, that would be far too unjust. And after consuming this pill, with Ling Han's penetrating ability as the Alchemy Emperor, he sensitively discovered that alchemical poison had been left in his body. If he consumed another Berserk Blood Spirit pill, not only would it not be able to raise his cultivation level, but it would instead cause him to die from the poison. What kind of concept was a Berserk Blood Spirit pill? It could raise the cultivation level of a Sun-Moon tier by a sub-minor level. If it exploded in an explosive manner, what kind of destruction would it cause? It could practically rival the full power strike of a low-level heavenly body tier elite. Which Sun-Moon tier could withstand this kind of toxicity? Ling Han was also at his wit's end. He observed the rate at which the alchemical poison was dissipating day after day, and came to a conclusion. This would probably take as long as 3 years. In other words, if he didn't have a special method to dispel the alchemical poison in his body, he would have to wait 3 years before he could consume a second Berserk Blood Spirit pill. But when he thought about it again, that meant that he would only need 50 years at most to reach the peak stage of the Sun-Moon tier. What kind of terrifying speed was this? How long was the lifespan of a Sun-Moon tier elite? The consummate level was 4 million years. A whole 4 million years, yet he could only use 50 years to cultivate. Wasn't this terrifying? Wasn't this fast enough? Of course, he couldn't compare to Hunyo. The level of cultivation in the celestial realm was higher, and nurturing Genesis tiers was perhaps like nurturing Shattering Void tier cultivators in the immortal realm. Although it wasn't something that could be achieved with a wave of a hand, it probably wouldn't be that difficult either. On the side of the immortal realm in the two-realm battlefield, a bridgehead was built. This bridgehead was called Wolf Fang City. The purpose of Wolf Fang City's existence was to provide a resting place for the warriors battling against the Netherworld. It was a safe haven, and at the same time, it was also a stronghold. Once Wolf Fang City fell, the army of the Netherworld would march straight in, and bring disaster to the entire Cloud Apex planet. There were only 2 imperial empires on the Cloud Apex planet, and they were the Great Crimson Sun Imperial Empire and the Blue Cloud Imperial Empire. Thus, the main forces here were naturally the armies of these 2 imperial empires. Additionally, all cultivators and demonic beasts that had reached the immortal level had a duty to join the two-realm battlefield. There were a few famous armies here, such as the Purple Moon Army under the command of the Purple Moon Divine Maiden, the Everlasting Wind Army under the command of the Wind Rider King, and the Arhat Army under the command of the Wide Travel Monk King. They had all established their reputation in the great battle against the beings of the Netherworld. Upon coming to the two-realm battlefield, cultivators could freely choose. One was to join the official army, and fight as a soldier. When they had accumulated enough merits, they could honorably retire. Secondly, they could also act independently and hunt down the beings of the Netherworld. This would also allow them to accumulate merits. Merit points were the currency used in the two-realm battlefield. Although fighting against the Netherworld's invasion was a righteous cause, they could not possibly make people shed blood just because of a few words. Therefore, the concept of merits came into being. One could use merits to exchange for various medicinal pills, divine equipment, or even martial arts. Once the total value of one's merits reached a certain level, one could choose to retire. It was mentioned earlier that joining the two-realm battlefield and fighting against the Netherworld's invasion was the duty of all divine-level cultivators. Everyone had to serve in this military service. If one were to exceed the time limit and fail to fulfill it, they would be beheaded if they were caught. Chapter 932. Don't underestimate a fifth-rate clan. Being able to rank among the ninth-rate clans in the imperial capital meant that they had status and prestige, and were existences that others had to look up to. The ancestor of the Shui clan was an elite in the medium extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. It was said that he had already reached the late stage of the medium extreme, and had hopes of advancing to the peak stage. However, it was probably impossible for him to advance to the high extreme. After all, time was cruel, and he didn't have such a long lifespan to live. The current clan leader of the Shui clan was a sixth-rank official of the imperial capital, and also Shui Yenyu's biological father. He had similarly advanced into the Sun-Moon tier, reaching the low extreme. In the future, he would definitely take over the responsibility of protecting the Shui clan. There were 8 guards lined up at the main entrance, and they were all in the Shattering Void tier. In the whole imperial capital, aside from the Empress, probably no other force had the right to have Mountain River tier cultivators act as guards. Not only was it a huge waste of wealth, but it was also too ostentatious. What would the Empress think of you? With Shui Yenyu leading the way, they naturally entered the Shui clan smoothly, and walked towards the study where the clan leader of the Shui clan was. Before entering, Shui Yenyu said in a low voice, "You mustn't give yourself away." Ling Han smiled faintly, and said, "Don't worry. I will accompany you from the side," Shui Yenyu continued. "That is really a huge support for me," Ling Han said with a smile. Shui Yenyu took a deep breath, then pushed open the door, and walked in first. "Father," she called softly. There was only a middle-aged man in the study, and he was currently sitting upright and reading a book. He raised his head upon hearing her words, and swept his gaze over Shui Yenyu and Ling Han before nodding. "You go out first," he said to Shui Yenyu. Shui Yenyu faltered, and was just about to speak, but was glared at by the man's stern eyes. Instantly, she could only obediently leave. Ling Han winked at her, meaning, "Just now you said you would accompany me and support me, so why are you abandoning me in the blink of an eye?" Shui Yenyu glared at him. He still had the mood to mock her at this time. What was this guy's heart made of? He was too careless. She walked out, and closed the door behind her. The patriarch of the Shui family was called Zigu. He didn't say anything and didn't even look at Ling Han. Instead, he continued to pick up his book. Ling Han, on the other hand, was observing the other party. This middle-aged man was excessively handsome. At least, he had to admit that he was no match for him. Moreover, this man actually had a pair of peach blossom eyes. It really gave off a feeling that he could kill anyone regardless of gender. Shui Yenyu should have taken after him. Not only did she inherit his outstanding looks, but she also had that kind of temperament. It was just that on a man, this would be a little feminine, but on a woman, it would be as charming as water, and seductive to the bone. Shui Zige had no intention of speaking at all, yet the aura of the sun-moon tear spread out. Putting aside shattering void tear cultivators, even elites of the mountain river tier would tremble all over, and would not even have the strength to stand. The suppression of every level in the immortal world was simply too powerful. This was especially true for the major realms. It was said that even the legendary 5-star geniuses would not be able to break through. For example, if one was at the peak stage of the consummate level of the mountain river tier, even if they were a 5-star genius, they wouldn't be able to face an elite at the early stage of the low extreme of the sun-moon tier head-on. The so-called multi-star geniuses could only break through a minor level. Ling Han couldn't bear it either. No matter how tough his spirit was, it couldn't change the fact that he was still in the shattering void tier. But what did that matter? Ling Han directly sat down. Since you won't speak, fine, then I'll cultivate. Who can afford to waste time? When Ling Han closed his eyes and began to cultivate leisurely, Shui Zige had the urge to smash the book in his hand onto Ling Han's face. He had wanted to take Ling Han down a notch, but in the end, he was outmaneuvered by the latter. You are Ling Han, he finally spoke. Isn't this nonsense? You asked your daughter to bring me here, so how could you not know who I am? Who asked him to be her father? Ling Han stood up, and said respectfully, I am. He still had to abide by the necessary etiquette. Previously, the other party had deliberately ignored him, and he sat quietly to cultivate. This was a kind of response, a kind of declaration. But an elder asked, so he couldn't appear arrogant. Shui Zige couldn't help but look surprised. This young man was only in his 20s, and his cultivation level was only in the shattering void tier, so how could he advance and retreat with such propriety and composure? Was this the domineering aura of an emperor? He somewhat admired Ling Han in his heart, but admiration was admiration. He wouldn't change his mind, and said, You are not worthy of my daughter. From today onwards, you are not allowed to see Yenyu. Ling Han laughed, and said, Lord Shui, you are too arbitrary. You actually dare to lecture me. Shui Zige couldn't help but laugh in extreme anger. Even the left minister couldn't be disrespectful to an official of the imperial court. This involved the etiquette of a nation, and even if Shui Zige killed Ling Han, the left minister couldn't say anything. I dare not, and I am not. Ling Han shook his head. I am merely stating a fact. Although I am only in the shattering void tier now, I can't possibly remain in the shattering void tier forever. The current 7 generals didn't advance step by step from the shattering void tier, and so did the left and right ministers. What an arrogant guy. Shui Zige humphed, and said, You also dare to compare yourself to these 9 lords. I can't compare myself now, but that might not be the case in the future. Ling Han smiled confidently, but didn't speak too confidently. One should always be a little more humble. However, Shui Zige didn't find any trace of modesty in him at all. But in terms of potential, who in this chaotic star's majestic empire could compare to Ling Han? Even someone as strong as Luo Ba had been insta-killed with a single move, and his battle prowess was at least 22 stars, who could compare? Even if you really advance into the heavenly body tier one day, my daughter might have already lost her beauty long ago. She can't afford to wait, and there's no need to wait either. Shui Zige waved his hand. This is the only warning. Don't ever meet my daughter again. Otherwise, I will make you regret it. Ling Han smiled, and said, Father-in-law, could it be that you don't know that you are about to become a grandfather? Pooh! Shui Zige directly spluttered, losing his composure. This was practically a bolt from the blue. His precious daughter had actually been taken by this young man, and not only had she done so, she had even become pregnant with his grandson. If he thought about it calmly, Ling Han had only been in the immortal realm for a month, so how could this have happened? But now, he was completely muddled by the word grandson, so how could he still think calmly? Yenyu! He suddenly roared. Shui Yenyu was just waiting at the door, and when she heard this loud roar, she hurriedly pushed open the door and entered. She saw that her father's hair was all standing on end, and his eyes were about to spit fire. He had completely lost his composure. She couldn't help but feel strange. What exactly had Ling Han said to her father that had actually angered him to such an extent? You. Shui Zaij pointed at Shui Yenyu, so furious that he couldn't speak. Ling Han stretched out a hand to block, and said, "Father-in-law, if you want to blame someone, blame me. Get lost. Get lost." Shui Zaij waved his hand repeatedly. Right now, he only wanted to be alone and quietly, and digest such astonishing news. Let's go. Ling Han grabbed Shui Yenyu, and ran off. Shui Yenyu was baffled, and only after they had left the Shui clan residence did she ask, "What exactly did you say to my father?" "Oh, I was afraid that he would separate us, so I just said that you are pregnant," Ling Han replied casually. "Pregnant what?" Shui Yenyu asked blankly. She was extremely pure when it came to the matters between men and women. Hee, what is it? Hurry up and say it. It's that your father is about to become a grandfather. Shui Yenyu was stunned at first, but finally came to her senses. Her pretty face was filled with killing intent. "Ling Han, I'm going to kill you." She brandished her sword, and began to chase after Ling Han. Chapter 933. Shui Yenyu chased after Ling Han for a while, and had to admit that this was a very good idea. At least it could shut the Shui clan's mouth for now. Even if the Shui clan didn't mind sending her to the Zhao clan, how could Great General Zhao accept a daughter-in-law who was pregnant with someone else's seed? Ever since she had decided to pretend to be husband and wife with Ling Han, she had already come to some sort of understanding. However, understanding and habit were two different things. That was why she had chased after Ling Han in a rage out of humiliation, but soon, she had no choice but to accept it. However, her anger hadn't dissipated, and she ignored Ling Han and left alone. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. She even pretended to be husband and wife, so what was the difference between having a child? Speaking of children, he couldn't help but miss his son. When they met again in the future, would his son still recognize him? Though he was very confident, merely climbing the mountain river tier would easily take over 1,000 years, and how long would it take to reach the heavenly body tier? Even if he was a genius and could shorten the time by 10 times, it would still take over 1,000 years or even tens of thousands of years. By that time, his son would be his grandfather's grandfather. There was no use worrying. The path of martial arts still had to be walked step by step. At least for now, he couldn't leave the chaotic star's majestic empire, so he could only accumulate strength as he thought of a way. However, the immortal realm was too big. First of all, the Rock Palace definitely wasn't on the Joint Peace Planet, so once it involved a journey on the level of the galaxy, it would be measured in years, as short as a few years, long as decades, or even centuries. Moreover, his physical body definitely couldn't directly cross the galaxy. Even if he could control the regulations of the immortal realm and fly, it was useless. The speed was too slow, so he had to use a flight god tool, and a very high-level one that could withstand a long journey and withstand the sudden dangers in the galaxy. For example, meteorites, black holes, and turbulent flows of the galaxy, all of those could doom immortal-level elites eternally. Once he entered the galaxy, it definitely wasn't a joke. He had to be fully prepared. Ling Han shook his head. It was better to advance steadily, and push his strength to 20 stars. After advancing into the immortal level, he could use alchemy to nurture his martial arts. Perhaps he could reproduce the miracle in the small world, and reach the heavenly body tier in the shortest time possible. As long as he could reach the heavenly body tier, he could openly leave the chaotic star's majestic empire. How could such an elite still be a hostage? Ling Han suddenly felt a chill in his heart, and a strong sense of danger rose in him. His divine sense was too powerful, almost on par with the low extreme of the mountain river tier. Thus, he naturally had a strong sense of danger. Shua, a cold light flashed, shooting straight at his chest from the side of the roof, precisely where his heart was. It was a short black arrow that emitted a frightening cold light. At this moment, Ling Han had to make a decision. The might of this arrow should only be at the low extreme of the mountain river tier. He had exchanged blows with Shui Yenyu before, so he could deduce this. The problem was this arrow forged from high-level godly metal? Would it be able to pierce through his physique? His fist involuntarily tightened. Shio, the arrow descended, and Ling Han's entire body was immediately sent flying. With a pang, he flipped a few times in the air, and then collapsed on the ground, blood immediately gushing out. Hee. A man in black jumped down from the roof. His figure was light, and he did not make the slightest sound. His face was actually covered with a piece of black cloth, and only a pair of bright eyes could be seen. Merely in the shattering void tier, have I been too careful? The man in black said to himself. He drew out a short saber, and walked towards Ling Han, intending to cut off Ling Han's head. As an assassin, if he did not bring back the target's head, how could he prove that he had assassinated him? He came to Ling Han's side, grabbed the latter's hair, and lifted Ling Han up. Just as he was about to slash with the saber, he was suddenly shocked. There was no arrow stuck in Ling Han's chest. As an assassin, how rich was his battle experience? His reactions were also ridiculously fast. He immediately covered his entire body with origin power, and the short saber in his right hand continued to slash at Ling Han's neck. He didn't know how Ling Han had dodged that arrow, and even deliberately lured him into a trap, but a mountain river tier cultivator would definitely be able to crush a shattering void tier cultivator. At such a close distance, what tricks could Ling Han play? Even if he took 10,000 steps back, he still covered his entire body with origin power, so what if he was attacked by 1,000 shattering void tier cultivators at the same time? It was impossible to injure him. No matter what, he was already standing in the safest and most advantageous position. But, would things really turn out as he had expected? Ling Han revealed a smile, suddenly condensed his spirit, and charged towards the other party. 7 kills, subduing soul technique. When, under the attack of the spirit, the man in black immediately revealed a hint of confusion, and fell into a state of unconsciousness. Ling Han took the chance to wrap his divine sense around him, and drew him into the black tower. Ding! At this time, the short saber sliced at Ling Han's neck, but in the black tower, Ling Han was a true god. With a paw, this short saber immediately turned into powder. So what if it was forged from godly metal? With a single thought from Ling Han, the iron powder once again gathered together. He could not waste it, he could recast it and make it into an arrow for him. Now, his strongest killing move was the annihilating dragon star arrow, but the arrow was a big problem. Shooting an arrow was equivalent to shooting out a shocking amount of wealth. With Ling Han's current strength, the 7-kill subduing soul technique would only be effective for an instant against elites in the low extreme of mountain river tier. The man in black immediately came to his senses. He could not help but sneer, and said, I underestimated you. Not only are you extremely daring, but your defense is also so shocking, actually being able to take an arrow from me without injury. Where is this? He immediately revealed an expression of shock. This was definitely not the alleyway from before, but a boundless grassland. An illusion? Ling Han smiled faintly. With his physique, he naturally could take an attack from someone in the low extreme of mountain river tier head-on, but it was difficult to dissipate the force, so he was sent flying. However, he still deliberately controlled himself, and when he landed, he took the chance to draw the arrow into the black tower. Then, he used the blood of a demonic beast to replace his own blood, making the man think that he had been hit. This was all thought of and done in an instant. Even Ling Han was very satisfied. He had captured a mountain river tear cultivator alive. If he had not made the man careless, how could he have gotten so close to him? Even if the 7-kill subduing soul technique was effective, he would not have been able to get close to the man in time. In the short time he charged over, the man would have already woken up. And after suffering a loss once, it would be difficult to make the man fall for the same trick again. Ling Han had undoubtedly created a miracle. With the cultivation of the shattering void tear, he had captured a mountain river tear cultivator. It was guaranteed that no one would believe it if he told others. Wasn't this a fantasy? It was as if a body refining tear cultivator could kill a shattering void tear cultivator. It was absolutely preposterous. You are not underestimating me, you are underestimating me too much. Ling Han shrugged. Tell me, who sent you to kill me, and what is your identity? Ha! The man in black laughed coldly. This was really a great joke. Was the man in black interrogating him? A shattering void tear cultivator. His expression became stern, and killing intent surged. Enough nonsense, die. Chapter 934. The black-robed man attacked, slapping towards Ling Han. Ling Han did not dodge, and allowed the other party to strike him head-on. He calmly said, "You are now in my grasp. If I want you to live, then you can live. If I want you to die, then the only path left for you is death." Peng, this slap landed solidly, but Ling Han did not even take half a step back, as if the other party had only lightly slapped him. How is this possible? The black-robed man was so shocked that his hair stood on end. This was beyond his imagination, making him feel an unknown fear. Ling Han smiled and said, "Welcome to my world." Illusion, all of this is an illusion. The black-robed man took a few steps back. He had been absent-minded for a moment just now, and that must have been when he was hit. What he felt now was all fake. Ling Han stretched out his hand and pressed down, saying, "Come, I'll have to torture you first." How strange, I'm clearly not someone who likes to use violence, why do people have to force me? Boom, a huge mountain appeared, pressing towards the black-robed man. The black-robed man was immediately pressed onto the ground. The mountain was like divine metal, and the weight was so frightening that the black-robed man had to use all his strength to resist, but the divine light around his body was on the verge of collapse, and he could not hold on for long. Ah! He let out a scream, and a dozen of his bones broke in an instant. Ling Han raised his hand slightly, lest the black-robed man be crushed to death directly. Ling Han waved his hand again, and the black cloth on the black-robed man's face immediately disappeared, revealing an extremely ordinary face. It was the kind of face that people would not take a second look at on the streets. But it should be known that after cultivating to the immortal level, one would naturally have an extraordinary aura, and could easily be distinguished from ordinary people. Strange. Ling Han became curious, and sat cross-legged on the ground, saying, "You're an assassin, right? You've specially cultivated some kind of technique to make you look more ordinary." The black-robed man only knew how to scream. As an assassin, before he had cultivated killing techniques, he had first received all kinds of cruel tests. Only after passing would he be truly accepted, to ensure that even if he was accidentally captured, he would not reveal the organization's secrets. Although he was screaming miserably, he did not have the slightest intention of begging for mercy. Ling Han smiled and said, "In here, I am the true God. There are only things that I can't think of, and there is nothing that I can't do. If you're so tolerant, then I'll use all the torture methods I can think of on you." As he tortured the black-clothed man, he cultivated at the same time. In any case, he couldn't waste any time. The black-clothed man was very persistent, but after half a day, he gave up. Inside the Black Tower, his pain was magnified 100-fold. Even if a small knife lightly cut his body, the pain would penetrate deep into his bones and directly reach his soul, completely disintegrating the willpower that he was so proud of. "I'm Mang Yi, a junior assassin from the Dark Night Hall," he said. His eyes were staring blankly like an idiot. As Ling Han listened, he realized that someone had invited the Dark Night Hall to offer a bounty of 10,000 true origin stones for his life. This was an astonishing amount of wealth, and if it was only for the life of a shattering void tier elite, it was likely that those in the low extreme of the mountain river tier, or even the medium extreme, would be tempted to make a quick profit. It was practically a gift. Mang Yi was only an assassin of the lowest level, so he naturally couldn't possibly know who the employer was. He was merely lucky to be the first to receive this mission. Of course, from the looks of it now, his luck was extraordinarily bad. Perhaps it's the Luo clan, perhaps it's Zhao Luan, or even more likely the Shui clan. Perhaps it's someone else who's jealous of me. Ling Han rubbed his chin, and couldn't help but laugh. He had only arrived in the immortal realm for a few days, yet he already had so many enemies that he couldn't tell who had hired an assassin. Was this considered a success or a failure? Probably a success. As the saying goes, those who don't attract jealousy are mediocre. I'm a genius, and that's why so many people want to kill me. Ling Han was very self-entertaining. He banished this assassin into the Black Tower, and of course, he confiscated all of the assassin's belongings. There were 164 true origin stones, 17 arrows, and a total of 7 bottles of various alchemical pills. As an elite of the mountain river tier, how could he be so poor? Ling Han shook his head. Really, his belongings weren't as rich as his. However, he didn't know that Meng Yi's belongings were all spent on those arrows. Every arrow was forged from godly metal. Though there was no lack of godly metal in the immortal realm, and these arrows were only forged from level 1 godly metal, it was still an extremely huge expenditure. Added with the expenditure on alchemical pills, it was actually not bad that he could save over 100 true origin stones. The Scarlet Heaven Academy only gave a genius like Ling Han 2 true origin stones every month as a reward. Ling Han exited the Black Tower, and returned to the academy. The assassination of the Dark Night Hall failed this time, but they definitely wouldn't give up. Then, the next assassin that came would definitely be even more powerful. Perhaps they would become mid-level assassins, high-level assassins, or even bronze-plate assassins. From Meng Yi, he found out that the Dark Night Hall was extremely powerful, and could practically be found in any country or city. This assassin organization divided the assassins into 6 grades, from lowest to highest: low level, mid-level, high level, bronze plate, silver plate, and gold plate. This division was not based on the level of the assassin's martial art, but rather on the number and quality of the targets they assassinated. The more people they killed, the higher the target's ability, and the higher the score they would obtain, and they would be able to keep rising. Thus, a mid-level assassin might be even stronger than a bronze-plate assassin. However, generally speaking, the higher the level of the assassin, the more powerful they would be. There were always a few exceptions. It's not a solution to be constantly pursued, but what can I do? Ling Han scratched his head as if he really didn't have any solution, and could only be as careful as possible. Returning to the academy, Ling Han put all his worries to the back of his mind, and focused on cultivation. He believed that even the Dark Night Hall wouldn't dare to act recklessly in the imperial capital, and he still had the Black Tower, so he wasn't worried that his life would be in danger. 3 days later, Ling Han was called over by the left minister. The competition between the 3 empires was about to begin, and the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire also had to confirm their candidates for the arena battles. This was a grand event. Thus, not only did the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire mobilize, but even its affiliated Majestic Empires also sent out their prodigies, wanting to do their part. After all, if the Chaotic Star's Majestic Empire's results were not good, they would also lose face. This was a relationship where they were bound together for good or ill. Ling Han first went to the left minister's residence, and then was personally led by the left minister to the ninth king's residence. The ninth king's surname was Hu Feiyun, and she was one of the 9 kings of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Her power could be said to be overwhelming. However, what was unbelievable was that this 9th king was actually only in the medium extreme of the mountain river tier. The 9 kings were even above the left and right ministers, and the 7 great generals, but Hu Feiyun was only in the medium extreme of the mountain river tier, so how could she convince the masses? Because she had the protection of Empress Yuan Xing. About 700,000 years ago, the Chaotic Star's majestic empire actually had an 8th general, and at that time, there were only 7 kings. The 7th king, who was ranked last, was also only in the mountain river tier, and was not taken seriously by that general, and was actually taken liberties with. As a result, the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire was furious, and directly killed this general, and his entire clan was annihilated. From then on, everyone was respectful to the 9 kings, because the Empress had said that seeing the 9 kings was like seeing the Empress. Chapter 935. This strike was too fast, so the sword had already pierced over, but the sound had not yet reached its destination. Ling Han clenched his fist, and pang, it smashed onto the sword light. Instantly, the brilliant sword light shattered into pieces, and a figure was also forced back by him. However, that person did have some skill. With a somersault in the air, he dissipated the majority of the power of Ling Han's punch, and landed steadily on the ground. This was a woman, and she looked to be only in her 20s. She was quite beautiful, but her face was filled with arrogance. She was either a young mistress, or a pampered daughter of some sect, and was used to being pampered. Behind her, there were another 7 people who were walking over quickly. They were all men, and only one of them was a white-haired old man. The other 6 were all young men, and they exuded a vigorous heroic spirit. Junior sister. Those 6 young men immediately ran over, and surrounded the young beauty, their concern evident in their words and expressions. Junior sister, are you all right? That guy didn't hurt you, right? Damn it, he actually dared to touch my junior sister. These people were concerned about the beauty, and at the same time, they glared fiercely at Ling Han, as if they wanted nothing more than to kill him with their gazes. They completely ignored the fact that it was actually the woman who had made the first move. Ling Han couldn't help but feel it was funny. This woman had attacked him for no reason, and he was only defending himself. Why did it seem like he had done something unforgivable? He shook his head, and said, "Don't you guys feel that you owe me an explanation and an apology?" An explanation. An apology. Those people all smirked coldly. He had injured their junior sister, and actually wanted them to explain and apologize? Had this guy's head been kicked by a donkey? Humph, you're just a mere plunderer, and everyone has the right to punish you, yet you actually want an explanation and an apology? How laughable! One of the young men said. Hearing his words, the anger in Ling Han's heart actually subsided a little. Indeed, there was no need to follow any rules when making a move against a plunderer. Otherwise, it would only result in one's own death. However, which eye of yours saw that he looked like a plunderer? You guys think that I am a plunderer? Ling Han shook his head. Your eyes are really quite cruel. I need to properly treat my eyes. Evil thief, the map in your hands belongs to one of my senior brothers. If you aren't a plunderer, how could it possibly have fallen into your hands? The woman had already caught her breath, and immediately rebuked Ling Han. How laughable! Ling Han scoffed. Could it be that I can't kill the plunderers and snatch it from their hands? Hee, young man, since that's the case, then please return the map to us, the only elder said. His voice was low, and it carried a very powerful might. He was in the high extreme of the sun-moon tier, so he naturally didn't take Ling Han seriously. Ling Han laughed loudly. This was anger, and he said, putting aside the question of whether this map originally belonged to you, since I obtained it, you guys should at least lower your attitude if you want to take it back, right? I'm not your slave, yet you guys are acting all arrogant and condescending. What do I owe you guys? Bullshit, a young man rebuked. This was originally ours, so shouldn't it be returned to us? Ling Han scoffed, and said, it's yours. Perhaps this map has existed for tens of millions of years, and is an antique. Its true owner has long since died, so how can it be yours? At most, it's just that you guys snatched it from somewhere. There's no need to be so self-righteous. Young man, are you asking for trouble? The elder said with a humph. Seventh uncle, there's no need to waste words with this kind of person. Capture him, the woman said. Among those present, only she dared to speak like this. Who asked her to be favored? The elder thought for a moment, and said, fine, but try not to injure anyone. The 7 young men all smirked coldly. Try not to injure anyone, and that was fine even if they were injured. The strength of this group of people was much stronger than that of the plunderers from before. Aside from the elder, who was in the high extreme of the Sun-Moon tier, the 7 of them had also advanced into the Sun-Moon tier. Their strength ranged from the early stage of the low extreme to the peak stage, but none of them had advanced into the medium extreme. True, if they didn't have this bit of strength, how could they dare to search for those plunderers everywhere? In that case, this treasure map really did have some value. With a thought, Ling Han stored the treasure map and the egg into the Black Tower. Then, he said coldly, although you guys aren't plunderers, you're not much better either. I'll give you one last warning, apologize to me. Otherwise, you can only pray for the best. How laughable. You still dare to threaten us at a time like this? Just kill him. In any case, his spatial spirit tool won't be able to escape. That's right, kill him. We're disciples of the Heaven's Sword Palace. The 7 of them said one after another. Heaven's Sword Palace. Instantly, Ling Han's killing intent soared. He hadn't gone to seek trouble with the 5 sects yet, and he had already encountered them. They really had the demeanor of the 5 sects, being so arrogant. He calmly said, aren't you guys afraid that I have a backer who can annihilate the Heaven's Sword Palace with a flip of my hand? Ha, those who truly have a backer wouldn't let you run around by yourself. They definitely have a protector protecting you in secret, a young man said with a scoff. Did they think they were idiots? They were very clear about who they could provoke and who they couldn't provoke. Moreover, let me tell you one more thing. Another young man said. All those who come from great clans and forces have a clear symbol on their bodies. He raised his sleeve, and they saw that there was a sword embroidered on it. It was very small, and if one didn't pay attention, they would really miss it. So that's how it is. Ling Han nodded, and said, thank you for this information, and as a reward for you, I'll send you on your way. He wanted to overthrow the 5 sects, but he didn't have any thoughts of killing everyone. That was because he thought that no matter how evil a sect was, there could still be people who were righteous. Thus, he only planned to disband the 5 sects, kill the higher-ups, and then let the others leave. But these people in front of him. They caused killing intent to rise in his heart. What shameless boasting. The 7 people all smirked coldly. Even though they were young, which one of them hadn't cultivated for 200,000 to 300,000 years? Who knew how much blood their hands had been stained with, so how could they possibly be soft-hearted? The treasure map is extremely important, so we definitely can't leave anyone alive. Kill. The 7 of them attacked, showing no mercy. Ling Han humphed, and with a flick of his finger, sword chi rained down on the 7 people. Previously, he hadn't killed them, not because he was soft-hearted, but rather because he didn't have the habit of killing indiscriminately. But now, since these people wanted to seek death, he naturally didn't mind sending them on their way. Not good. The old man instantly paled when he saw Ling Han attack. This was too terrifying. It was clearly only a few flick of his finger, yet the battle prowess that Ling Han had erupted with was almost on par with his own. One had to realize that Ling Han was already at the middle stage of the low extreme, and his power could surpass 6 stars. Thus, his battle prowess was actually at the peak stage of the medium extreme. How terrifying was this? Pu. The 7 people's heads exploded from the rain of swords at the same time, and not a single one of them had a complete corpse. Although the old man had moved, he was still a step too late. He could only watch as his 7 juniors were slaughtered. These were prodigies that the sect had nurtured for 100 to 200,000 years. The old man's heart was dripping with blood. He glared at Ling Han viciously, and said, "Brat, I'm going to cut off your flesh piece by piece and feed it to the dogs." Chapter 936. Shattering Void Tier cultivators naturally wouldn't be taken seriously by great elites of the heavenly body tier, but the power condensed by Ling Han's palm far surpassed 20 stars of Shattering Void Tier, causing these powerful figures to be moved. Breaking through the limit of any tier was definitely not easy, which meant that one could reach an astonishing peak of martial art in the future. Yi Qingyun was also present. He had battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void Tier, so he naturally had to fight for his country. Moreover, breaking through to the Mountain River Tier was definitely not something that could be done in a short period of time, so how could he break through just because he wanted to? He'd seen Ling Han's battle prowess, and when he discovered that Ling Han was about to attack, he was instantly scared stiff. He directly jumped out of his chair, and ran for his life as if his bottom was on fire. As the top elite of the Shattering Void Tier division of the Eastern Institution, his strength was known by all, so when he sat there, naturally no one dared to challenge him. To pull down a Shattering Void Tier cultivator with battle prowess of 21 stars of Shattering Void Tier, it would require at least 10 people with battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void Tier to join forces. There might not even be 5 people with battle prowess of 20 stars of Shattering Void Tier here, so who would be foolish enough to challenge him? But with Yi Qingyun's escape, many people were dumbfounded. Was he possessed? At this moment, Ling Han struck out with his palm. Hong! A golden light swept past. Peng, 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 everyone was sent flying like flowers scattered by a celestial maiden, flying to various corners. Some fell to the ground, some were pinned down by chairs, and some fell into the bushes. In short, apart from Yi Qingyun, who saw the opportunity and escaped in time, the others were all knocked over. Most of them fainted on the spot, and a few of them were still conscious, but their faces were full of shock. This was too strong, wasn't it? The corner of Yi Qingyun's mouth twitched. He knew that Ling Han's attack would definitely be powerful, but after seeing it with his own eyes, he still couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. Was this really something a Shattering Void Tier cultivator could do? Freak, too freakish. The left minister was a little stunned. He only knew that Ling Han had come by opening the sky, and his strength was definitely over 20 stars, enough to win glory for him. But who would have thought that Ling Han would actually be so powerful? Did he have such strength when he was young? Minister Zhou couldn't help but shake his head. This was the first time he looked at this young man. He had underestimated this monarch from a small world. Perhaps, he could become a supreme expert in the future. This thought flashed through Minister Zhu's mind, but he immediately laughed. Being strong now did not mean he would be strong in the future. There were many fallen geniuses in the world. It could even be said that there was no lack of geniuses in the world. However, the number of geniuses who could ascend to the peak was pitifully small. Many of them were not well received by the public and were not at the peak. There were too many accidents on the road of martial art. He was definitely thinking too much. A heavenly body tier elite would only appear once every million years, which was pitifully rare. However, it had to be said that the current Ling Han was absolutely domineering, displaying an invincible demeanor. He picked up a chair and sat down alone. There was no one who could sit next to him. The ninth king's petite mouth gaped into a circle, and her eyes widened even further. She was still young and didn't have many thoughts. She was simply shocked by Ling Han's attack. Great! Great! She clapped her hands and hopped around like an innocent little girl. This attracted everyone's attention. She hurriedly stuck out her tongue, appearing even more innocent and innocent. Yi Qingyun finally walked back, gritting his teeth. He also picked up a chair, but didn't dare to sit next to Ling Han. Instead, he placed his chair further behind. Those who were still conscious on the ground slowly crawled up, and picked up their chairs to sit down. Like Yi Qingyun, they didn't dare to sit next to Ling Han. This was respect for an elite. Ling Han's strength had far surpassed their level. Counting them, there were exactly 10 people, so there was no need to fight anymore. This caused the left minister and the others to be slightly shocked. Could it be that Ling Han had already calculated when he delivered this attack? If that was the case, then this young man's strength would have to be estimated a little higher. Ling Han didn't do it deliberately. He only controlled the power of his attack so that the strongest group wouldn't faint. He didn't think that there would be exactly 10 people present. Thus, Ma Xing, Yang Zi, and the others were all present. The right minister and the 7 generals all took a few more glances at Ling Han. Such a freak of the shattering void tier, even they were moved, and remembered this name. But that was all. The 9th king, however, appeared very excited, and asked Ling Han, "What's your name?" "I am Ling Han," Ling Han said, standing up, neither servile nor overbearing. The 9th king couldn't help but clap her hands. "This time, we'll definitely be first. Hee hee, this is the first time I've done something for Big Sister, and I'm already so beautiful. In the future, no one is allowed to call me little idiot." After saying that, she stuck out her tongue again. This was a big embarrassment. All right, all of you can go back." She hurriedly shooed them away, obviously not wanting to be laughed at. No one dared to disobey, and all left. The 9th king's order was the empress's order, and no one could disobey. Among the top 10, 7 came from the Scarlet Heaven Academy. Those 6 followed behind Ling Han, their eyes filled with reverence, and there was even fanaticism in their eyes. They had reached the height of 19 stars of shattering void tier, or even 20 stars of battle prowess, and were deeply aware of the difficulty of reaching and surpassing this step. Naturally, they were filled with reverence and adoration towards Ling Han. The might of that palm strike just now had practically astonished them. Along the way, they were like attendants, guarding Ling Han as he entered the academy. This caused others to click their tongues in wonder. "Oh." Zhao Luan revealed a smile. He was still standing under that waterfall, because he was cultivating a secret technique. His body couldn't move, and he was observing this waterfall, comprehending some kind of pattern. The person from this small world actually has battle prowess that exceeds 20 stars. He appeared to be slightly surprised. Zhuo Shao was currently reporting to him what had happened these few days. "Yes, young master," Zhuo Shao said respectfully, a sliver of admiration in his eyes. The strength of this ant from this small world somewhat surpassed his expectations. Luo Ba was insta-killed in one move, and now he became the representative of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. Since he has obtained the right to participate in the battle, then it's not good to kill him, or else if the Empress blames us. When Zhao Luan said this, he couldn't help but shiver. Even a genius like him would still tremble in his heart at the mention of the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire. In the hearts of all the citizens of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire, the Empress of the Chaotic Star's majestic empire was eternally invincible, an existence that could never be surpassed. "Young master, what do you plan to do?" Zhuo Shao asked. He understood this young master of his, and definitely wouldn't spare Ling Han just like that. Zhao Luan laughed loudly, and said, "Let him live for now, and kill him after the competition between the 3 empires. However, it's not that easy for him. Go and make arrangements," he instructed. Zhuo Xiao couldn't help but smile, and said, "Haha, even if that brat can safely survive tonight, he'll still be hated by the entire Western institution." Chapter 937. Ling Han cultivated in his room, his mind calm. He was progressing further and further on the path of combining 6 techniques into one, and added with the fact that he had money in his hands, he could buy enough alchemical pills. His power was currently increasing at an astonishing rate. At most half a year, or even less, he could reach the limit of 20 stars of shattering void tier. He looked attentive, but his hair immediately stood on end, because there was another person in the courtyard without a sound. This person was dressed in black, his face covered with a veil, and he even had a cloak draped over his body. Even his figure could not be seen. Was this another assassin from the Dark Night Hall? However, the Dark Night Hall was actually so bold, daring to make a move in the Scarlet Heaven Academy, die. The black-robed man said with a cold humph, and suddenly attacked, striking out at Ling Han. Why was his speed so slow? Ling Han could clearly sense that there were even 3 mountains and rivers moving behind this person, but the might of this strike was at most 22 stars of shattering void tier, 23 stars of shattering void tier, completely inconsistent with the cultivation level of the high extreme of the mountain river tier. He leaped, dodging this strike. Xiao, the black-robed man pursued, and struck out another palm strike at Ling Han. This strike was much more powerful, reaching the level of 25 stars of shattering void tier. It was too easy to raise 2 stars of shattering void tier battle prowess in the mountain river tier, and it was a matter of a single thought. Ling Han frowned, and hurriedly flashed again, escaping from the courtyard. The black-robed man chased, attacking continuously, but not with the destructive power of the mountain river tier, merely driving Ling Han away. One chased, and the other fled. Their speed was very fast, and in the blink of an eye, they left the northern institution, heading west. Ling Han instantly understood that the other party wanted to chase him to the western institution. In the Scarlet Heaven Academy, the 4 institutions were incompatible like fire and water, full of fierce competition. If a student of the northern institution appeared in the western institution, what would the result be? He would be beaten into a horrible state. The other party wanted to use the whole Western institution to make him better. This person was definitely not a member of the Dark Night Hall. Otherwise, he would not have done such an unnecessary thing. Moreover, if he was really a member of the Dark Night Hall, how could he have entered the Scarlet Heaven Academy? He should have been killed long ago. But a black-clothed man of unknown origin was openly committing murder. What did this mean? The higher-ups of the academy definitely knew of this person's identity, but they didn't do anything to stop him, which meant that they were afraid of his background. That left only one person. Zhao Luan. This person was definitely Zhao Luan's subordinate, and the higher-ups of the academy also knew that this person would not act recklessly. Thus, they turned a blind eye to this. After all, Zhao Luan was the only son of great General Zhao. Who would dare to not give him face? Bam! The black-clothed man suddenly launched a heavy attack. With a single blow, Ling Han was immediately sent flying and crashed heavily into a courtyard wall. Who is it? This was the dormitory of the Shattering Void Tier Division of the Western Institution. Immediately, a great many people ran out, and discovered Ling Han amidst the ruins. The black-clothed man's figure had long since flashed, and disappeared without a trace. Ling Han stood up. That black-clothed man's last attack did not use any force, but the attack was too fast, making him unable to dodge. Naturally, it was completely impossible to injure him. Someone from the Northern Institution. It's Ling Han. The first among this batch of new students. Fuck, does he think that just because his battle prowess exceeds 20 stars, he can come to our Western institution to behave atrociously? Hit him. There were as many as 2,000 students in the Shattering Void Tier Division of the Western institution, and every one of them had entered the academy for more than 5 years. How could their battle prowess reach 15 stars? With so many people added together, which shattering void tier cultivator wouldn't cower? Moreover, it was Ling Han who barged into the Western institution, so he deserved to be beaten up. Who could he reason with? Forced? Who forced you to become a black-clothed man? What a joke, anyone who wore black clothes was a black-clothed man. Ling Han smirked coldly internally. He knew that Zhao Luan was trying to disgust him. The latter did not dare to kill him in the academy grounds, but the son of the great General Zhao could do as he pleased. So what if he made you unhappy? If he was no match for him, then he would definitely be beaten up. If by any chance he could win, then he would similarly provoke the wrath of the Mountain River tier students of the Western Institution. Aren't you being too arrogant, coming to the Western Institution alone to strut around? Ling Han thought of what Shui Yanyu had said. Zhao Luan was like a poisonous snake. It was indeed a very appropriate comment. Hong, a few dozen people immediately charged over. Now that they had the advantage in numbers, they were naturally not the slightest bit afraid of Ling Han. Ling Han stretched out a hand, and grabbed one of them, using him as a shield. He smiled, and said, "Everyone, I accidentally walked the wrong way. My apologies, I will leave now. How about we part on good terms?" Humph, barging into our Western institution, and still thinking of swaggering off as if nothing had happened? Ling Han, aren't you a little too arrogant? Can you boast now, being able to barge into our Western institution alone, and then leave unscathed? In your dreams. They made a move, but with a shield, they naturally had many misgivings. Don't take hostages if you dare. That's right, let's fight fair and square. They goaded him. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. You hundreds and thousands of people ganging up on me, this could be considered fair and square. However, he really wasn't afraid. Since you guys insist on fighting, then let's fight. Ling Han casually tossed the hostage in his hand aside. What was there for him to fear? Ha, beat him up. A few dozen people charged over again, and even more people surrounded to watch the battle. Even if a shattering void tier cultivator could casually strike from over 30 meters away, over 1,000 people were still too many, after all, and definitely couldn't attack at the same time. Ling Han's right fist bulged, and he punched out. Pang! His strength was really too strong, and one punch was like a crushing mountain. Instantly, over a dozen people were sent flying, directly fainting. The students of the Western Institution were all shocked. What kind of fuck you battle prowess was this? One punch could send over a dozen people flying. One had to know that to be accepted by the Scarlet Heaven Academy, which one of them wasn't a genius among geniuses. Go, I don't believe that we can't take care of him with so many of us. People surged towards Ling Han like an ocean, but Ling Han only needed to throw a punch, and over a dozen people were sent flying like rice straws, fainting with a single blow, immediately losing their ability to fight. After a dozen punches, over 200 people had fallen on the scene. There were still close to 1,800 people from the Western Institution still standing, but that would only be a matter of a few hundred more punches. Too freakish, how could a shattering void tier cultivator be this strong? They were all humans, but why was the gap between them so great? Should they also squeeze into some small world to gain experience? Anyone else? Ling Han asked calmly, his eyes sweeping over the remaining 1,800 people. Being swept by his gaze, everyone couldn't help but lower their eyes, not daring to meet his gaze. He obviously didn't possess the king's chi, but why did he possess such a strong oppressive force? Go, we definitely can't let him leave so easily. Otherwise, where will our Western Institution put its face? At all costs, keep him here. Chapter 938. The students of the Western Institution continuously surged forward, all of them fearlessly. This was not a fight to the death, and no matter how ruthless Ling Han was, he could not possibly kill or cripple them. Thus, they were much less apprehensive, and their bravery was stimulated. They wanted to beat up this madman who dared to look down on the Western institution. Unfortunately, no matter how many sheep there were, how could they be a match for a lion? Not to mention that they were not even sheep in front of Ling Han. Ling Han casually punched out, and the crowd was like a goddess scattering flowers. Peng! Immediately, more than 10 people were sent flying. It was very easy, and there was not the slightest bit of difficulty. Senior apprentice brother Jia, it's yours. Everyone looked towards a skinny youth who was like a bean sprout. His entire body was really just skin and bones. This youth nodded, and suddenly sucked in a breath. Peng! As if air had been pumped into his left arm, it instantly swelled up, and then it was his right arm, torso, and 2 legs. Only his head still maintained its original appearance. In an instant, he turned from a bean sprout into a 9 meters tall giant. His muscles bulged high, reflecting light as if they had been smeared with a layer of oil. Senior apprentice brother Jia has cultivated the incomplete heaven-devouring art, and usually only has 18 stars of battle prowess, but once he explodes, his battle prowess can reach 21 stars, or even more. Humph, senior apprentice brother Jia's talent is not inferior to Yi Qingyun's in the first place. But Yi Qingyun can reach 21 stars of battle prowess permanently, and senior apprentice brother Jia's explosive battle prowess can definitely surpass it. 22 stars. Everyone was full of hope that senior apprentice brother Jia could turn the tide, and suppress Ling Han, so that the Western institution would not continue to lose face. Peng, peng, peng. Senior apprentice brother Jia rushed towards Ling Han. His current figure was huge, and his weight was astonishing. Every step he took was like thunder, and the ground was trembling as if it was about to collapse. With his rush, the others all fled. The current senior apprentice brother Jia was too strong, and even if he was swept by the aftershock of his strength, he would suffer a calamity. Boom! Senior apprentice brother Jia punched out, smashing towards Ling Han's head. In front of his 9 meters tall body, Ling Han was practically like a newborn baby, pitifully small. Beat him to death! Everyone shouted. Ling Han was slightly surprised. The battle prowess that this giant had erupted with actually surpassed Yi Qingyun's. Unfortunately, he had obviously used some kind of secret technique to forcefully increase his battle prowess, and the amount of time he could maintain it was pitifully short. Precisely because of this, the explosion of battle prowess was naturally incomparably terrifying. But compared with Ling Han, this battle prowess was completely lacking. But compared to Ling Han, this was when senior brother Jia's fist had reached the top of Ling Han's head, it could no longer descend. But because the size of the two of them was completely different, senior brother Jia's fist was shockingly large, and when it came crashing down on Ling Han's head, the others couldn't see the exact situation at all. Many people even thought that Ling Han had been hit, and couldn't help but cheer. They roared for a while, yet discovered that Ling Han was still standing steadily, and couldn't help but look shocked. Is this guy a monster? Ling Han raised his hand, and senior apprentice brother Jia's huge body was lifted high above his head. It was like an ant lifting a lion, full of strangeness and disharmony. Go! Ling Han waved his hand, and Xiao, senior apprentice brother Jia was thrown out. He crashed heavily into a wall, and stopped with a bang. Pooh! Senior apprentice brother Jia let out an earth-shattering fart, which blew his whole body into the air. However, his body shrank rapidly, and instantly returned to its original size. His battle prowess also returned to 18 stars of shattering void tier. Even someone as strong as senior apprentice brother Jia was no match for him. The people of the West Courtyard were finally afraid. They were not facing an ordinary genius, and the advantage in numbers was completely useless in front of this monster. Ling Han cracked a smile, and said, "Still want to fight?" The place where they stood was filled with people lying in disorder. Now, this number was already more than half, but Ling Han was still calm and unruffled, as if this couldn't even be considered a warm-up. They shook their heads in unison. No more fighting, this guy was too freakish. It was better to wait for this freak to advance into the mountain river tier, and then have the senior apprentice brothers and sisters in the mountain river tier deal with him. No more fighting, then I'm going back to sleep. Ling Han did not say any more words of apology. He had already defeated more than half of the people of the Western institution, and saying sorry now would be equivalent to showing off, and would have the opposite effect. He left with his hands clasped behind his back, and the people of the Western institution could only watch on, their eyes spitting fire. Actually, Ling Han was also very displeased. Though he had shown off his might, he had been forced to. Zhao Luan, oh, Zhao Luan, this enmity between us has been formed, Ling Han thought. Did he have the ability to stand against Zhao Luan now? No. Putting aside Zhao Luan, he couldn't even defeat his 3 great followers, as well as the subordinates of his followers. There was nothing he could do about it. The gap between the mountain river tier and the shattering void tier was really too wide. I have to break through to the mountain river tier. Then, with my potential, becoming a 5-star genius would definitely not be difficult. Then, once I reach the low extreme, I would be able to match those in the middle stage of the medium extreme. At least I wouldn't be in such a passive position. Zhao Luan became enemies with me because of senior sister Shui, so senior sister Shui is also his weakness. I'll pretend to be intimate with senior sister Shui. No matter what, I have to anger him. Not taking revenge when there's a grudge is not in line with my personality. The next day, the monthly examination of the Northern Institution began. This was to test everyone's ability, to see if they had improved or even regressed. After all, some people had held back their energy to enter the academy, and after entering, it was inevitable that they would relax and not cultivate diligently. It was also possible that their ability would decline instead of increasing. The path of martial art was like rowing a boat against the current. If there was a regression, the first time would be a warning, the second time would be the removal of all benefits, and the third time would be expulsion. Thus, the monthly examination was still quite important. All the 500 or so new students had arrived. Shui Yenyu swept her gaze over everyone's faces, and said, "Today is the monthly examination, so everyone must do your best. If your performance is worse than when you first entered the academy, you will receive a warning from the academy, and after 3 times, you will be directly expelled." "Yes." Everyone replied solemnly. Ling Han raised his hand, then stood up, and said, "Senior sister, if I get the first place, is there a reward?" Shui Yenyu shook her head, and said, "No." "No?" Ling Han instantly lost interest, and lay down on the table to sleep. Without a reward, where would he have any motivation? Seeing his lazy appearance, Shui Yenyu couldn't help but feel angry. This guy was obviously so strong, but why didn't he have any initiative or sense of responsibility? If this guy wasn't her husband in name, she really couldn't be bothered with him. "Begin," she said in displeasure. This so-called examination, to put it bluntly, was to fight. Otherwise, what else could it be? But no one dared to challenge Ling Han, and they all tacitly agreed that he was the first place. What a joke. Yesterday, senior brother Ling single-handedly challenged the Western institution. How awesome was that? If you were stronger than senior brother Ling, and the Western institution came looking for trash, wouldn't you have to step forward bravely? Wasn't that asking for a beating? Thus, Ling Han obviously hadn't fought a single battle, yet he automatically became the first place of the monthly examination. Chapter 939. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden stayed for a very long time before finally leaving. She knew a great many of Ling Han's secrets, but she still didn't know about the existence of the Black Tower. That was because there were too many people here, and it was too complicated. Ling Han would only bring her into the Black Tower when the two of them were absolutely alone. Additionally, once they entered the army, they couldn't easily leave. They had to accumulate enough merit points. Thus, their current priority was to fight the beings of the netherworld. Furthermore, the army emphasized the importance of teamwork. Thus, it was useless even if Ling Han handed the corpses of the beings of the netherworld in the Black Tower to her. They had to be divided equally among everyone. This was also the reason why the army was safe, yet the accumulation of merit points was slow. They didn't emphasize individual heroism, and instead placed the importance of teamwork. Thus, Ling Han needed to wait until the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden retired before he could win the heart of this beauty. When the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden returned, Zhu Liyun immediately asked nervously, "Sister, what did he say?" There was still a bit of the air of a young and inexperienced girl. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't help but feel diffident. She could say that Ling Han was actually the man that she was destined to be with since a long time ago. It was just that they had only met again after 10,000 years. At first, she had come to deliver a love letter on behalf of her close friend, but in the end, she had hooked up with him instead. "This," she said hesitantly. Zhu Liyun's expression changed, and she asked, "Did you give the letter to Grandmaster Ling or not?" "Big Sister Yun, he isn't suitable for you. You'd better forget about him," the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden advised. Zhu Liyun didn't say anything. She stared at her for a while, and then said, "Don't tell me that you've fallen in love with him." There was nothing wrong with saying that. However, she was a whole 10,000 years too early. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't explain this, so she could only look on speechlessly. "Damn you, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden." Zhu Liyun was enraged. She pointed at the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and said, "You bitch, I've treated you like a sister, yet this is how you repay me. You've even stolen your own sister's man. Why don't you go and die?" A hint of anger appeared on the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's face, and she said, "Setting aside whether I interfered or not, do you think that Ling Han will definitely fall in love with you?" "Why not?" Zhu Liyun shouted. "I'm at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier, and he's only a measly level 4 or level 5 alchemist. Truth be told, it's actually him who's trying to curry favor with me, and I didn't even turn my back on him. What does he have to be displeased about?" "Auntie, you're really narcissistic." At this moment, the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden naturally knew that Ling Han couldn't possibly be lying. He was a genuine level 8 alchemist, so cultivators at the consummate level of the Sun Moon tier really weren't much in front of him. At the very least, they would have to bow down to him. Firstly, you don't have any beauty, secondly, you're old, and thirdly, your status is also slightly inferior. What right do you have to say that Ling Han is a social climber? At first, she still felt slightly apologetic towards Zhu Liyun. However, when she heard Zhu Liyun say this, anger welled up in her heart, and this bit of guilt was swept away completely. She didn't owe Zhu Liyun anything in the first place. "Bitch, let's make a clean break from now on," Zhu Liyun said as she walked away. The Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden shook her head. Zhu Liyun was the only friend she had made after entering the military camp. Unfortunately, she couldn't withstand the slightest test. Speaking of which, Zhu Liyun naturally wouldn't give up. She immediately went to find Ling Han. Since the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden couldn't convey her feelings on her behalf, she naturally could only thicken her skin and do it herself. In reality, she hadn't been shy before. Rather, she had wanted to give Ling Han the impression that she was reserved. However, how could Ling Han possibly be interested in her? Even a seductive beauty like Lin Yuqi couldn't move him, let alone a middle-aged woman with no beauty at all. More importantly, they didn't know each other at all, okay? After being politely but firmly rejected by Ling Han, Zhu Liyun returned to her own tent with a livid expression. Her expression was ice-cold, and she fiercely said, "Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, I had thought that you were pretty, and that you might have some powerful connections. That was why I wanted to befriend you, but I didn't think that you would steal the man of my dreams. Humph, since the Xia clan is looking for you, then I'll lend them a hand. Also, That damn man made it sound so nice, saying that he already has a woman he loves, and that we're not suitable for each other. Pay. Isn't it all because that bitch is better than me? You dare to humiliate me like this? Humph, when the people of the Xia clan come, they'll kill you as well. You're only a level 4 or level 5 alchemist, yet you dare to be so arrogant. Humph. She released a bird that was only the size of a bee. This was a hummingbird, and although it didn't have any offensive abilities, its advantage lay in its speed. In fact, it could even rival heavenly body tier elites. This was something that she had caught by chance, and after training it, it had become her communication tool. She was a veteran Sun-Moon tier elite, and her merit points were so high that she could have long since retired dozens of times. However, she had remained in the Purple Moon Army because it was safer to travel with the army. Moreover, her merit points could be used to purchase alchemical pills, god tools, and so on. When she had first entered the two-realm battlefield, she had only been at the low extreme of the Sun-Moon tier. Now, however, she was at the consummate level, and this was only because she had exchanged for a large number of alchemical pills. Of course, this was also because her cultivation talent was extraordinary. Otherwise, alchemical pills alone wouldn't have been enough. After so many years, she had naturally built up a considerable network of contacts in the Purple Moon Army. Now that she was using the hummingbird to transmit information, it wouldn't take long for the news to reach the ears of the Xia clan. At most, in 2 months, the people of the Xia clan would appear here. I'm waiting for a good show. With Ling Han helping to win over the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden's support, her reputation in the Purple Moon Army instantly skyrocketed. Everyone knew that the reason why Ling Han was so generous was because he wanted to pursue the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. In the next few days, the Purple Moon Army encountered a few more netherworld beings, and they won all of their battles. Ling Han contributed a large number of explosive thunder pills. Not to mention an increase of 1 star of battle prowess. An increase of 1 star of battle prowess for an entire army was extremely terrifying. However, their consecutive victories also provoked the netherworld, and they dispatched an even more powerful army to search for them. This was an army that was composed entirely of elites at the consummate level of the Sun-Moon tier, and there were as many as 50 of them. This was an unstoppable force, and the Purple Moon Army didn't dare to oppose it at all. They immediately chose to retreat. The purpose of their expedition was to exterminate some netherworld beings, and their second purpose was to search for realm spirit stones. Now that they had exterminated a large number of enemies, they hadn't found a single realm spirit stone. This disappointed them greatly. Since they had already attracted the attention of elites, the army of women decided to directly return to the army camp. They would only come out after a period of time. In any case, Ling Han couldn't enter the Purple Moon Army, so he didn't plan to return with the army of women. He was alone, and he also had the Black Tower to hide in. The dangerous two-realm battlefield was nothing to him. He wanted to kill more netherworld beings and accumulate merit points. This would allow him to exchange them for godly metal. Moreover, if he could pick up some realm spirit stones, he would be rich. He could exchange them for a vast amount of godly metal. Ling Han had already placed increasing the quality of his divine demon sword in an extremely important position. This was second only to increasing his own strength. He decided to venture deeper into the two-realm battlefield and kill more netherworld beings. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.